The Reverend's hands shook as he opened the Bible. Not from age, Reverend Patterson was barely 50, but from the two people standing before him in the empty church. Vivian Mercer wore the same black dress she'd buried her husband in 3 days ago, and the man beside her looked like he'd been carved from the same stone they'd used for Caleb's grave marker. Rhett Calloway didn't fidget, didn't shift his weight, didn't do anything that might suggest a human heartbeat somewhere inside that chest. He just stood there, hat in his hands, a scar running from his left eyebrow down to his jaw like someone had tried to split his face in half and given up halfway through. "We are gathered here today," Patterson started, then stopped. "Look, nobody's watching. You two want to just sign the papers and be done with it?"
"Read it," Vivian said. Her voice came out harder than she intended, but everything inside her felt hard right now. Hard and cold and angry at every single person in this godforsaken town. Patterson cleared his throat. The words came faster than any wedding ceremony had a right to go. Vivian barely heard them. She was too busy remembering the faces of the town elders when they delivered their verdict 2 days after she'd buried Caleb.
"Territorial law is clear, Mrs. Mercer. An unmarried woman cannot hold property rights to a working ranch. You have 30 days to secure a husband, or the land reverts to the territory for auction." Auction. That's what they'd called it. Like her home was a used saddle someone didn't want anymore. "Do you, Vivian Marie Mercer, take this man?" "I do." She didn't wait for the rest. Patterson blinked, looked at Rhett. "And do you?" "Yeah." That was it. One word. Rhett Calloway had just agreed to marry her with the same enthusiasm most men reserved for digging latrines. "I now pronounce you man and wife. You may—" Patterson stopped himself. "You may, well, you know." Rhett put his hat back on. Vivian turned toward the door. "Mrs. Callow." Patterson caught himself. "I mean, you'll need to sign the certificate." The registration book sat on a table near the altar. Vivian signed her name in quick, angry strokes. Rhett took the pen. His hands were bigger than she'd expected, scarred across the knuckles, and wrote his name in surprisingly neat letters. "Congratulations," Patterson said, but he was already backing toward the vestry like he couldn't wait to be done with both of them. They walked out of the church into late afternoon sunlight that felt too bright, too cheerful for what had just happened. Vivian's wagon waited in the street. Rhett's horse, a big gray gelding that looked as mean as its owner, stood tied to the rail. "Your things at the boarding house?" Vivian asked. "Don't have things." She looked at him. Really looked at him, for the first time since this nightmare started. He was taller than Caleb had been, broader in the shoulders. His face had the kind of weathering that came from years of hard living, and those eyes, dark brown, almost black, held something that made her stomach tighten. Not fear exactly, more like the feeling you got when you saw a wolf from a distance and knew it had already seen you first. "You don't have belongings? Got a horse? Got a gun?" "Got what I'm wearing." He gestured vaguely at himself. "That's it." "You've been living in Black Hollow for 6 months." "Didn't plan on staying." She wanted to ask why he'd agreed to this then, but the answer was already burning in her chest. Everyone in town knew the story. 5 years ago, Caleb had pulled Rhett Calloway out of a burning building after a gunfight went wrong, saved his life. And now Caleb was dead, and the debt had come due. "The ranch is 4 miles north," she said. "You can follow me out." "Know where it is?" "You've been there?" "No, but I know where everything is." He untied his horse. "You want me to follow, or you want me to ride ahead and make sure nobody's waiting?" The question hit her like cold water. She hadn't even thought about that, hadn't considered that someone might be watching, might be planning something now that she was alone with a stranger. "How would I know if you're actually checking versus just running off?" Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "If I wanted to run, I'd have been gone before the Reverend opened that Bible." He mounted up without using the stirrup, just grabbed the saddle horn and swung himself up in one smooth motion. Then he was gone. The gray gelding moving fast enough to kick up dust, but not so fast it looked like flight. Vivian climbed onto her wagon seat and took up the reins. Her hands were shaking now. Not from fear, from rage. At the town elders who'd done this. At the territory laws that made it possible. At Caleb for getting himself killed and leaving her alone in this mess. That last thought made guilt twist in her stomach, but she couldn't help it. Caleb had been a good man, a decent husband, but he'd also been the kind of man who thought right and wrong were clear, simple things. The kind who believed if you just stood up for what was proper, everything would work out fine. Well, standing up for what was proper had gotten him shot in the back during a routine patrol. And now Vivian was married to a killer because territorial law said widows were too weak to own land. The ride to the ranch took 40 minutes, long enough for the adrenaline to fade, long enough for the reality to settle in. She was married again, to a man she didn't know, a man whose reputation preceded him like thunder before a storm. Rhett Calloway, the ghost of Bitter Creek, the man who'd supposedly killed 17 people in a single night during some range war down in Texas. The gunslinger who'd disappeared for 3 years and come back changed, quieter, harder, like whatever had happened in those missing years had burned away anything soft inside him. When she crested the last ridge and saw the ranch spread out below, Rhett was already there. His horse stood ground-tied near the barn, and he was walking the perimeter of the main house, checking windows, looking at sight lines like he was planning a defense, or an escape. She drove the wagon up to the house and climbed down. Her legs were stiff, everything hurt. She'd barely slept since Caleb died, and exhaustion was starting to win against willpower. "Nobody's been here," Rhett said without turning around. "Tracks are all days old, front door lock's been tampered with, but not broken. Someone tried to break in? Probably just kids, or someone seeing if you'd left anything valuable." He finally looked at her. "You got coffee?" The question was so normal it almost made her laugh. "Yeah, I've got coffee." "Good. We need to talk about rules." She let him inside. The house felt too empty, too quiet. She'd lived here for 3 years with Caleb, but now it felt like a stranger's home, like she was walking through someone else's life. The kitchen was clean. She'd kept everything clean because that's what you did when you didn't know what else to do with grief. She put coffee on to boil while Rhett stood in the doorway, not quite entering, not quite leaving. "You can sit down," she said. "I'm fine. Suit yourself." She got 2 cups from the shelf. "You wanted to talk about rules?" "Yeah." He shifted his weight, and for the first time he looked almost uncomfortable. "I know what the arrangement is. Marriage on paper only. I sleep in the barn. We don't—" He stopped. "We keep things separate." That was the deal. "Right," he paused. "But I need you to understand something. Long as I'm here, I'm here. That means if someone comes for you, they come through me. That means if there's trouble, you do what I say when I say it. I won't explain. I won't debate. You just move." The coffee started boiling. She poured 2 cups, handed him one. "You expecting trouble?" "Always." He took the cup but didn't drink. "Your husband was killed 3 weeks ago. You just married a known gunfighter. Every outlaw and drifter within 100 miles is going to hear about that and wonder what's really going on here. Some will figure you're vulnerable. Some will figure you're bait. Either way, they'll come looking. And you'll what? Shoot everyone who rides up?" "If I have to." He said it like he was talking about feeding chickens. "But mostly, I'll make sure they don't ride up in the first place." She sat down at the table. The exhaustion was winning. "Why did you agree to this?" "Owed Caleb. He saved your life 5 years ago. That's a long time to carry a debt." "Some debts don't have expiration dates." He finally took a sip of coffee, made a face. "This is terrible." "Then make your own." "Can't. Don't know how." She stared at him. "You're a grown man, and you don't know how to make coffee?" "Never learned. Always had someone else make it or went without." Despite everything, the funeral, the forced marriage, the nightmare her life had become, she almost smiled. "You can kill 17 people in one night, but you can't boil water?" His expression didn't change. 19, not 17, and I never said I killed them all myself." The smile died before it reached her face. She set her cup down. "The barn's got a loft. There's blankets in the chest by the door. Help yourself." "What about supplies?" "For what?" "Winter's coming. You got enough firewood, enough feed for the stock, enough ammunition?" He looked around the kitchen. "Enough food?" "I haven't exactly had time to inventory." "Then we start tomorrow. I'll take stock of everything. You make a list of what we need." He drained the terrible coffee without flinching. "And we need to talk about money." "What about it?" "You got any?" The question should have offended her, but it was too practical to argue with. "Some. Caleb had savings." The ranch produces enough to get by. Not anymore, it doesn't. Excuse me? You're alone now. Word gets out that you can't manage the place. Buyers will circle like buzzards. They'll wait until you're desperate, then offer half what it's worth. He set the cup down. So we don't let them see weakness. We work twice as hard. Make this place look strong. Make them think we're thriving. We aren't thriving. I'm barely surviving. Then we fake it until we make it real. He moved toward the door. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start making this place into something worth keeping. He left before she could respond. She heard his boots on the porch, then the creak of the barn door. Then nothing. Vivian sat in her kitchen, their kitchen now, technically, and stared at her cold coffee. 24 hours ago, she'd been a widow planning a funeral. Now she was married to a stranger who talked about violence like it was weather and made plans for winter like they were actually going to make it that far. She should have been terrified. Instead, she was just tired. The next morning, Vivian woke to the sound of splitting wood. She dressed in work clothes, no point in mourning blacks if she was going to spend the day doing inventory, and walked outside to find Rhett attacking their winter woodpile like it had personally wronged him. He'd already split enough to fill the shed twice over, and he wasn't slowing down. Shirt off, despite the cold morning air, sweat running down his back, muscles working with mechanical precision. The scars she'd noticed on his hands ran up his arms, too. Some looked like knife wounds, others like burns. One across his ribs looked like someone had tried to gut him and almost succeeded. "Morning," she called. He buried the axe in the chopping block and reached for his shirt. "Figured I'd start with firewood. You got enough to last maybe 2 months if we're careful. Need at least 4 months' worth to be safe. It's only September. Snow comes early this far north." He pulled the shirt on. "I counted the livestock. You got 20 head of cattle, 6 horses, 2 dozen chickens, and a pig. The cattle need better grazing and half your fence line is falling apart." She bristled. "Caleb and I managed just fine." Caleb had help. Had a hand who worked here part-time, didn't he? "Tommy. He quit after Caleb died. So now it's just us." He walked toward the barn. "Come on, I'll show you what needs fixing." The next hour was a brutal lesson in how much work a ranch required. Rhett walked her through every weak point, every problem, everything that would get worse before winter hit. The barn roof leaked, the well pump needed replacing. The chicken coop had a hole big enough for foxes. The fences were a disaster. "This is going to take months," Vivian said. "Yep. We can't do this alone. We'll have to." He stopped near the cattle pen. "Unless you want to hire help, but that means letting strangers on the property. Means trusting people who'll talk in town about what they see here." "And what would they see?" He looked at her. "That we're not really married, that we're strangers pretending, that you're vulnerable." The word hit harder than it should have. Vulnerable. That's what she was now. That's what the town elders had made her. "So we do it ourselves," she said. "We do it ourselves." They worked until noon, then broke for a cold lunch because Vivian hadn't thought to start anything cooking. Rhett ate without complaint. Bread, cheese, some dried meat, then went back to splitting wood while she started on the chicken coop repairs. It should have been awkward, working in silence with a stranger. But Rhett didn't fill space with empty talk. He just worked. And somehow, that made it easier. She could pretend he was just hired help, could pretend this was temporary, could pretend her entire life hadn't been ripped apart and badly stitched back together in the span of a week. Around mid-afternoon, a rider appeared on the ridge. Rhett saw him first. She didn't know how she knew that. He didn't stop working, didn't call out. But something in the way he moved changed, got more deliberate, more aware. "Go inside," he said quietly. "What?" "Inside. Now." The rider came closer. Young man, maybe 25, wearing range clothes and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He reined up near the house. "Afternoon," the stranger called. "Looking for Mrs. Mercer." Vivian started to respond, but Rhett moved between them so smoothly it looked like he'd teleported. 1 second he was by the woodpile, the next he was standing 3 feet from the stranger's horse, hands loose at his sides. "She's busy," Rhett said. The stranger's smile faltered. "I just wanted to pay my respects. Heard about Sheriff Mercer. Terrible thing." "Respects are paid. You can leave now." "Now hold on. Oh, you deaf?" Rhett's voice didn't rise,
Didn't get threatening, but something in it made the stranger's horse sidestep nervously. I said leave. The stranger looked past Rhett to Vivian. Ma'am, I don't know who this man is, but my husband, Vivian heard herself say. That's my husband. The words felt strange in her mouth. Foreign. But they worked. The stranger's face went through several expressions, surprise, confusion, something that might have been anger, before settling on forced politeness. I see. Well, congratulations. He tipped his hat. I'll be going then. He left fast enough to kick up dust. Rhett watched until he was out of sight, then went back to the woodpile like nothing had happened. Who was that? Vivian asked. Didn't ask his name. But you knew he was trouble. Everyone's trouble until they prove otherwise. He picked up the axe. That's rule number 1 out here, trust nobody. You want me to trust nobody, but I'm supposed to trust you? He paused mid-swing. No, you're supposed to survive with me. Trust doesn't enter into it. It should have sounded cold. Should have made her angry. Instead, it just sounded honest. More honest than anything anyone had said to her since Caleb died. That night, after Rhett had gone to the barn and she was alone in the house again, Vivian stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the dark shape of the building. A lamp burned in the loft. She could see the faint glow through the cracks. She wondered if he slept with his gun, then wondered why she cared. 3 days passed, then a week. They fell into a routine that looked almost normal from the outside. Rhett worked like 3 men, fixing everything that was broken and building things she hadn't known they needed. Vivian cooked, managed the house, dealt with the chickens and the garden, and tried not to think about how her life had become this strange half-marriage with a man who barely spoke to her. The town left them alone. Nobody visited. Nobody stopped by to check on the widow. It was like Black Hollow had decided they didn't exist anymore. That should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a warning. On the 8th day, Vivian rode into town for supplies. She went alone. Rhett had offered to come, but she'd refused. She needed to prove she could still do normal things, still function, still exist without a man hovering over her. The general store was quiet. Too quiet. People stopped talking when she walked in, and the conversations that started up again afterward were too careful, too polite. She loaded her wagon with flour, sugar, coffee, ammunition, and nails, paid with Caleb's money, and tried not to notice how the shopkeeper counted it twice like he thought she might have stolen it. She was loading the last crate when Marcus Tully appeared. Town council member, cattle baron, the man who'd been first to suggest she couldn't keep the ranch without a husband. Mrs. Mercer, he said. Not Mrs. Calloway. He did that on purpose. Heard you're managing out there. Managing fine. That's so. He leaned against her wagon. Too close. Too familiar. Funny thing, we've been hearing stories about your new husband, about his past. His past doesn't concern me. Should concern you. Man like that has enemies, dangerous enemies. Tully's smile was all teeth. Be a shame if that danger spilled over onto innocent folk. She understood the threat immediately. They were going to use Rhett's reputation against her, turn the town against them, make it impossible to buy supplies, hire help, exist. If you've got something to say, Mr. Tully, say it plain. Just looking out for the town's safety, making sure we know who we're harboring. He tipped his hat. You take care now. She drove home faster than she should have, anger making her hands tight on the reins. When she got back to the ranch, Rhett was in the barn working on the new fence posts. We've got a problem, she said without preamble. He looked up. What kind? She told him about Tully, about the threat, about how the town was going to use his past as an excuse to isolate them. Rhett listened without interrupting. When she finished, he went back to work. That's it? She demanded. That's all you've got to say? What do you want me to say? That I'm surprised? He drove a nail with 3 precise hits. I told you this would happen. They're scared. Scared people do stupid things. So we just accept it? We prepare for it. He looked at her. Winter's coming. We need supplies. If they won't sell to us in town, we go somewhere else. Next settlement is 30 miles south. It'll take longer, cost more, but we manage. And if they come here, if Tully decides we're too much trouble, then I handle it. Handle it how? However I need to. He went back to work. But it won't come to that. Tully's a bully.
Bullies make noise, but they don't move unless they think they can win clean, and he's not sure he can win clean with me here. You sound certain. I am. He set the hammer down. Because men like Tully have spent their whole lives getting their way through fear. They don't know what to do when someone isn't afraid, so they wait, they watch, they look for weakness. Then we can't show weakness.
No, he agreed. We can't. That night, Vivian couldn't sleep. She kept hearing Tully's voice, kept seeing the way the town had looked at her. Like she was already gone, already defeated. She got up, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and went outside. The night was cold, stars hard and bright overhead. The barn lamp was still lit. She shouldn't have. Should have gone back inside. Should have maintained the distance they'd agreed on. But she walked to the barn anyway. Rhett was sitting in the loft, gun disassembled on a blanket in front of him, cleaning each piece with careful attention. He didn't look up when she climbed the ladder, but he didn't tell her to leave either. Can't sleep? He asked. No. Thinking about Tully. Thinking about all of it. She sat down on a hay bale, thinking about how everything changed so fast. He worked in silence for a minute, then it didn't change. It just stopped hiding. What do you mean? The town never liked you, never trusted Caleb for marrying an outsider. They just pretended because he was sheriff and they needed him. He put the gun back together with practiced ease. Now he's gone, and they don't have to pretend anymore. That's a horrible way to look at it. It's an honest way to look at it. He loaded the gun, checked the action, set it aside. People don't change when things get bad. They just stop pretending to be better than they are. She wanted to argue, wanted to say he was wrong, that people were basically good, that the town would come around. But she'd seen their faces, heard their whispers, knew what they thought of her. How do you live like that? She asked. Always expecting the worst? I don't expect the worst. I prepare for it. He looked at her. There's a difference. Expecting it makes you paranoid. Preparing for it keeps you alive. Sounds lonely. It is. He said it without self-pity. Just fact. But lonely and alive beats dead and remembered. She should have gone back to the house then. Should have maintained the distance. But something made her ask, why'd you really agree to marry me? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because Caleb saved my life. And because I knew what would happen to you if I didn't. You felt sorry for me. No, I felt angry. At the town. At the law. At every system that puts people in positions where they have to choose between bad and worse. He leaned back against the wall. Caleb was a good man. One of maybe 3 I've ever met. Figured I could honor him by keeping his widow from getting destroyed by the same people who got him killed. The words hit her like a slap. What do you mean the same people? Nothing. Forget I said it. No. She stood up. What did you mean? You think someone in town killed Caleb? I think Caleb was shot in the back during a routine patrol. I think the ambush was professional, and I think a lot of people benefited from him being dead. He met her eyes. But I don't have proof, just suspicion. Her hands were shaking. Who? Who benefited? Anyone who wanted territorial land opened for sale. Anyone who had business interests that Caleb was investigating. Anyone who... Marcus Tully. Maybe. He stood up. But like I said, I don't have proof. And accusing a town council member of murder without proof is a good way to end up dead yourself. So we just let it go? We survive. We build. We get strong enough that nobody can push us around. His voice was flat, hard. And maybe, eventually, the truth comes out. But right now, all we can do is make it to tomorrow. She wanted to scream, wanted to break something, wanted to ride into town and demand answers. Instead, she climbed back down the ladder and walked to the house through cold starlight, her husband's words echoing in her head. The same people who got him killed. If Rhett was right, if Caleb had been murdered by someone in Black Hollow, then everything was worse than she'd thought. The forced marriage, the isolation, the threats. It wasn't just about controlling a widow. It was about making sure she couldn't ask the right questions. 2 weeks became 3. The ranch slowly transformed under Rhett's relentless work. The fences got fixed. The barn roof stopped leaking. The well pump got replaced. They built a smokehouse, repaired the cattle pen,
and reinforced the chicken coop against predators. They worked side by side most days, and slowly, so slowly Vivian almost didn't notice, the silence between them became less uncomfortable. They started talking, small things at first, practical things, then bigger things, stories, histories. She learned that Rhett had grown up in Kansas, that he'd lost his family to cholera when he was 14, that he'd fallen in with bad people because he had nowhere else to go, and violence turned out to be something he was good at. He learned that Vivian had married Caleb after running away from her father's house in St. Louis, that she'd wanted adventure and freedom and had found both in the frontier, though not in the way she'd imagined, that she'd loved Caleb in a quiet, comfortable way that wasn't passion but had been enough. Had been. Past tense. She tried not to think about that too much. The town continued to avoid them. No visitors, no friendly calls. Even the circuit preacher skipped their ranch when he made his monthly rounds. "We're ghosts," Vivian said one afternoon. They were mending fence line together, working through the endless posts and wire that defined the property. "The town's decided we don't exist." "Good," Rhett said. "Makes us harder to target." "I don't want to be a ghost." "You'd rather be visible? Rather have everyone watching, judging, waiting for you to fail?" She hammered a nail harder than necessary. "I'd rather be treated like a human being." "Being human is overrated." He moved to the next post. "Being alive is better." They worked in silence after that. But Vivian couldn't let it go. Couldn't accept that this was her life now, isolated, feared, existing on the edges of society. That night, she made a decision. The next Sunday, she was going to church. With or without Rhett. With or without permission. She was going to walk into that building and sit in a pew and dare anyone to tell her she didn't belong. When she told Rhett, he didn't argue. He just said, "I'm coming with you." "You don't have to." "Yeah, I do." "Why?" "Because you're going to make a point, and points get people hurt." He checked his gun, something he did constantly, like breathing. "So I'm coming, and if anyone starts something, I'm finishing it." Sunday morning came cold and clear. Vivian dressed in her best dress, not morning black anymore, but a dark blue that felt like a small rebellion. Rhett put on a clean shirt and his best hat and looked like exactly what he was, a gunfighter playing at civilization. They rode into town together. People stopped on the street to stare. Conversations died mid-sentence. By the time they reached the church, half the town knew they were there. Reverend Patterson stood at the door greeting people. When he saw them, his face went carefully blank. "Mrs. Calloway," he said, using her married name. That was something. "Mr. Calloway." "Reverend," Vivian said. They walked inside. The church wasn't full, never was, but every head turned. Vivian felt their eyes like brands. She kept walking, found a pew near the back, sat down. Rhett sat beside her, close enough to be proper, far enough to maintain distance. The service started. Patterson preached about forgiveness and redemption, and Vivian wondered if he'd planned that sermon or if it was just cruel timing. People sang hymns without looking at them, took communion without acknowledging them. It wasn't until the end, when everyone was filing out, that Marcus Tully made his move. He stood in the aisle, blocking their exit. "Calloway," he said, "didn't expect to see you in a house of worship." "People surprise you," Rhett said mildly. "Some surprises aren't welcome." Tully looked at Vivian. "Your husband know what kind of man he's harboring?" "My husband," Vivian said clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "knows exactly who he is, and so do I." "That's so." Tully's smile was ugly. "Then you know he's got blood on his hands, killed women and children down in Bitter Creek, burned a whole town because someone crossed him." The church had gone silent. Everyone listening, everyone waiting. Rhett stood up. He moved slow, casual. But something in the movement made Tully take a step back. "You're talking about Bitter Creek," Rhett said. His voice was conversational, easy. "The town that got burned during a range war between two cattle barons who hired gunfighters to do their killing. The town where I pulled 6 people out of a burning hotel before the roof collapsed, 3 of them kids." He took a step forward. "That what you heard? Or did you only hear the version that makes me look like a monster?" Tully's face flushed. "I heard you were there. That's enough. Being there and causing it aren't the same thing. Rhett's voice stayed level. But you go ahead and tell your version. Spread your rumors. Won't change the facts. Facts are that you're a killer. Yeah. Rhett didn't deny it. I am. Killed men who needed killing. Killed men who were trying to kill me. Never killed anyone who wasn't holding a gun. He paused. But I can start making exceptions if you want. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Vivian stood up, took Rhett's arm. We're leaving. They walked out together. Nobody tried to stop them. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright, too normal after the darkness of the church. You didn't have to do that, Vivian said as they mounted up. Yeah, I did. Threatening him won't help. Wasn't threatening, was educating. He turned his horse toward home. He'll back off now, at least for a while. How do you know? Because he's a coward, and cowards only push when they think they won't get pushed back. They rode home in silence. But this time the silence felt different. Felt like they were on the same side instead of just occupying the same space. That night, Rhett didn't go to the barn right away. He sat on the porch, cleaning his gun, while Vivian made coffee inside. She brought him a cup, stood beside him in the dark. Thank you, she said, for today. Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you.
Then who did you do it for? He was quiet for a long time, then, for me.
Because I'm tired of people deciding who I am based on stories they heard. Are the stories true? Some of them. He set the gun aside. I've done bad things, hurt people, killed people, but I didn't enjoy it, didn't take pride in it. He looked up at her. The difference between a killer and a gunfighter is that one of them wishes they were someone else. I've spent 10 years wishing I was someone else. She should have been afraid of him, should have seen the danger. Instead, she saw something else. Something that looked almost like regret. Maybe you can be, she said quietly. Someone else, I mean. Not with my history. Then make a new history. He didn't answer, just picked up his coffee and drank it. Still terrible, but he never complained, and stared out at the dark prairie like he could see something she couldn't. Later, after he'd gone to the barn and she was alone again, Vivian stood at the window and wondered when she'd stopped thinking of Rhett Calloway as the stranger she'd been forced to marry, and started thinking of him as something else, something closer to human, something that might, eventually, become a partner. The confrontation with Tully had consequences. Over the next week, 2 of their fence lines were cut. Someone poisoned their well, not enough to make the water undrinkable, but enough to make them boil everything. And one morning, they found 3 of their cattle dead in the north pasture, shot during the night. Sending a message, Rhett said, looking at the carcasses, letting us know they can hurt us. We should report it. To who? The new sheriff? He shook his head. Town appointed Marcus Tully's nephew to the job. You really think he's going to investigate his uncle? Then what do? We send a message back. That night, Rhett rode out alone. He didn't say where he was going, didn't ask permission, just saddled up and disappeared into the dark. Vivian stayed awake, pacing, worrying, imagining the worst. He'd been gone 3 hours when she heard hoofbeats. She grabbed Caleb's rifle and went to the door. But it was Rhett's horse, and Rhett was still in the saddle, looking tired but unhurt. What did you do? She demanded. Had a conversation. With who? Some people who needed to understand that sabotaging our ranch has consequences. He dismounted, moved like everything hurt. They won't bother us again. Rhett? I didn't kill anyone. He looked at her. But I made it clear that next time I might. Sometimes that's enough. She wanted to be angry. Wanted to tell him he couldn't just threaten people. But she was also tired. Tired of being afraid, tired of waiting for the next attack, tired of being the victim. Did it work? She asked instead. We'll find out. They did find out. Over the next 2 weeks, nothing happened. No sabotage. No threats. The ranch stayed quiet. Too quiet. They're planning something bigger, Rhett said one morning. This is the calm before the storm. Or maybe they gave up. Men like Tully don't give up. They regroup. He was right. Vivian knew he was right, but she didn't want to spend every day waiting for disaster. Didn't want to live in fear. Then we get ready, she said. They spent the next week fortifying.
Rhett built shutters for the windows that could be barred from inside. They stockpiled ammunition, moved essential supplies into the house where they'd be accessible during a siege, set up sight lines and fields of fire like they were preparing for war, because maybe they were. November came with the first real cold. They'd made it through almost 2 months of marriage, and Vivian realized with some surprise that she no longer thought of Rhett as a stranger. He was still quiet, still dangerous, still carried his past like a weight, but he was also steady, reliable, and occasionally, in unguarded moments, almost kind. One afternoon, she found him fixing the porch railing with more care than the job required. "It's just a railing," she said. "It's your house. Should be done right." "Our house," she corrected without thinking. He looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Our house." That night, there was a storm. Rain hammered the roof, wind screamed through the eaves. Vivian lay awake listening to it, thinking about the ranch, about Rhett, about how her life had become something she never expected. She must have dozed off eventually because she woke to shouting, Rhett's voice, sharp, urgent. She grabbed her robe and ran downstairs. Rhett stood at the front window, gun in hand, staring out at the storm. "What is it?" she asked. "Riders, 3 of them, coming fast." Her stomach dropped. "Who?" "Don't know, but they're not friendly." He moved away from the window. "Get your rifle. Stay away from the glass." She did what he said, adrenaline burning through the last fog of sleep. Outside, the storm made everything harder to see. But she caught flashes of movement, horses, men, then gunfire. The first bullet shattered the front window. Vivian dropped flat, heart hammering. More shots followed, tearing through the shutters, splintering wood. Rhett returned fire, precise, controlled. 2 shots and one of the riders went down. "Stay down," he ordered. But she was already moving, crawling to the side window, finding an angle. She'd grown up hunting, knew how to shoot, and right now someone was trying to kill them. She aimed through this broken shutter and fired. Missed. Fired again. This time one of the riders jerked, grabbed his arm, wheeled his horse away. "Nice shot," Rhett called. The 3rd rider broke off, retreated. Within seconds, the attackers were gone, swallowed by the storm. Rhett waited a full minute before moving. Then he went to the door, looked out carefully. "They're gone." Vivian stood on shaking legs. "Who were they?" "Hired guns. Probably sent by Tully." He checked his ammunition. "This was a warning. Next time they'll bring more men." "We can't fight off an army." "No." He looked at her. "But we can make them think twice about becoming one." The next morning, they found the body of the rider Rhett had killed. Young man, maybe 20, dead eyes staring at nothing. Vivian felt sick looking at him. This was what her life had become. Dead bodies in her yard, violence as a daily possibility. "I'll bury him," Rhett said. "No." She forced herself to look. "We do it together. He might have been trying to kill us, but he was still human." They buried him on the edge of the property. No marker, no ceremony, just dirt and silence. Afterward, Vivian stood in her kitchen and tried to stop shaking. Rhett made coffee. Somehow he'd learned while she wasn't paying attention, and set a cup in front of her. "You okay?" he asked. "No." "Good. If you were okay, I'd be worried." He sat across from her. "What happened last night, that was the line. They crossed it. Now we have to decide what we do next." "What do you mean?" "I mean we can keep defending, keep reacting, keep waiting for them to try again." He paused. "Or we can take the fight to them." "You want to attack Tully?" "I want to find out the truth. About who killed Caleb. About why they're so determined to run us off this land." He met her eyes. "Because this isn't just about a widow and a ranch anymore. This is about something bigger. And the only way to survive it is to drag it into the light." She wanted to say no. Wanted to say it was too dangerous, but she was tired of being afraid, tired of being the victim. "How?" she asked. "We start asking questions, talking to people who knew Caleb, finding out what he was investigating before he died." Rhett's voice was steady. "And we find allies. Because we can't do this alone. Who would ally with us? The town hates us. The town elders hate us, but there are people in Black Hollow who aren't part of that. People who liked Caleb. People who are tired of being pushed around by men like Tully.
He finished his coffee. We find them. We organize. And we make enough noise that someone with actual authority pays attention. It sounded impossible. It sounded insane. It sounded like the only option they had. Okay, Vivian said. We do it. We do it, Rhett agreed. And for the first time since Caleb died, Vivian felt something other than grief and fear. She felt anger. And anger, she was learning, was a kind of fuel. The first person they approached was Martha Hendricks, the seamstress who'd made Vivian's wedding dress when she married Caleb. Martha lived above her shop on the edge of town, far enough from the main street that conversations could happen without every ear in Black Hollow listening. Vivian knocked 3 times before the door opened a crack. Martha's weathered face appeared, eyes darting past them to the empty street. "Mrs. Calloway?" she said. Not welcoming, just acknowledging. "We need to talk," Vivian said. "About Caleb." "Nothing to talk about. Sheriff's dead. That's all there is." "No, it's not." Vivian put her hand on the door before Martha could close it. "Please, 5 minutes." Martha looked at Rhett. Her expression hardened. "He stays outside." "He's my husband." "Don't care if he's the governor. That man's reputation walks ahead of him, and I won't have it in my home." Rhett stepped back without argument. "I'll wait." Inside, Martha's shop smelled like fabric and lamp oil. Dresses in various states of completion hung from hooks on the walls. A half-finished wedding dress, someone else's future, someone else's hope, sat on the work table. "Talk fast," Martha said. "My next client comes in 20 minutes." Caleb was investigating something before he died, something that made powerful people nervous. Vivian kept her voice low. "I need to know what it was." "Why? Won't bring him back." "No, but it might keep others from getting hurt." Vivian moved closer. "Martha, you knew Caleb. You know he wouldn't have been killed over nothing. Someone wanted him dead, someone in this town." Martha's hands twisted in her apron. "Even if I knew something, which I'm not saying I do, talking about it would be suicide. You see what they did to Caleb. You think they'd hesitate with me? So we just let them win? We survive. That's what women like us do." Martha's voice turned bitter. "We keep our heads down and our mouths shut, and we survive." Vivian wanted to argue, wanted to push harder, but she saw the fear in Martha's eyes and recognized it. She'd felt that same fear, still felt it some mornings. "If you change your mind," Vivian said quietly, "you know where to find me." She left before Martha could respond. Rhett was leaning against the building, watching the street with that constant awareness he carried like a second skin. "No luck?" he asked. "She's scared." "Can't blame her." He pushed off the wall. "But scared people sometimes talk when they think nobody's listening. We plant enough seeds. Maybe one of them grows." They tried 4 more people that day. A rancher who'd worked with Caleb on cattle theft cases. The telegraph operator. A widow who ran the boarding house. A shopkeeper who'd always given Caleb credit when times were tight. Nobody would talk. But nobody slammed doors either. They listened, made excuses, looked uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, Vivian saw a possibility. "They know something," she said as they rode home. The sun was setting, painting the prairie in shades of orange and red that made everything look like it was on fire. "They're just too afraid to say it." "Fear's a cage," Rhett said, "but cages have keys." "What's the key?" "Safety. Or anger, whichever comes first." That night, they sat on the porch and planned their next move. The temperature had dropped enough that Vivian could see her breath, and winter felt close enough to touch. They needed to move faster. Needed to find answers before the snow came and Black Hollow became even more isolated. "There's someone else we should talk to," Rhett said. "Doc Pritchard. He examined Caleb's body. Wrote the death report." "The town doctor. He's practically Tully's personal physician, which means he saw things, knows things." Rhett stared out at the dark prairie. "And doctors take oaths. Sometimes those oaths matter more than money." "You really think he'll talk?" "I think he's old enough not to care about consequences." Rhett stood up. "We try tomorrow." But tomorrow brought different problems. They woke to find 5 more cattle dead. Not shot this time, poisoned. The animals had died badly. Foam around their mouths, bodies twisted in pain. Vivian stood in the pasture looking at the carnage and felt something break inside her.
This wasn't just about Caleb anymore. This was about destroying everything she'd built, everything she had left. They're escalating, Rhett said. His voice was flat, but she heard the anger underneath, trying to bankrupt us before winter hits. It's working. She did the math in her head. They'd lost 8 cattle total, nearly half their herd. We can't survive another loss like this. Then we don't let there be another loss. He walked back toward the house. Tonight we take turns on watch. Every night until this ends. We can't stay awake forever. We can stay awake long enough. He stopped, looked back at her. Unless you want to give up, let them win. The word stung. I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? I'm saying I'm tired. I'm saying I'm scared. I'm saying maybe they're right and we should just... She stopped. Couldn't finish the sentence. Give up? Rhett's expression didn't change. Sell the ranch and leave? Maybe. And go where? Do what? He came back to her. You think they'll let you leave quietly? You think Tully will just forget about you once you're not in his way anymore? What else can we do? Fight. He said it simply. Fight until they stop pushing or we stop breathing. That's easy for you to say. Fighting is what you do. No. His voice turned hard. Surviving is what I do. Fighting's just the tool. And right now it's the only tool we've got. She wanted to argue, wanted to find another option, but standing there in the pasture with dead cattle and empty sky, she couldn't think of one. Okay, she said finally. We fight. That afternoon, they rode into town together. Doc Pritchard's office sat behind the general store, a small building that smelled like carbolic acid and old blood. The doctor himself was in his 70s, white-haired and stooped, with hands that shook from years of surgery and whiskey. He looked up when they entered. His expression went carefully neutral. Mrs. Calloway. Mr. Calloway. He set down the mortar and pestle he'd been using. What can I do for you? We want to talk about Caleb, Vivian said. Nothing to talk about. Man's dead and buried. You examined his body, Rhett said. You wrote the report. Did my job, that's all. What did the report say? Vivian asked. Same thing I told everyone. Shot in the back. Died instantly. Pritchard's hands found the mortar again, grinding nothing. A nervous habit. Terrible tragedy. Who shot him? Didn't see it happen. Can't say. Can't or won't. Rhett moved closer. Not threatening, just present. Because there's a difference. Pritchard's jaw tightened. I'm an old man. I do my job, keep my head down, and hope to die in my sleep. I don't involve myself in politics. This isn't politics, Vivian said. This is murder. Everything's politics out here. The doctor finally looked at her. Your husband knew that, knew it, and kept digging anyway. Look where it got him. The words hung between them like smoke. So he was investigating something, Rhett said. Something that got him killed. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Rhett glanced at the door, making sure they were alone. What did Caleb find? Pritchard was quiet for a long time. His hands stopped their grinding. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Railroad contracts, land purchases, sales that didn't make sense unless someone knew where the tracks were going before they were supposed to. He looked old suddenly, tired. Caleb figured out the town council was buying up territory land based on inside information, making fortunes while everyone else scrambled for scraps. Tully, Vivian said. Tully. Mayor Griggs. Half the council. Pritchard started grinding again. They've been doing it for 2 years, made themselves rich, and when Caleb got close to proving it, they had him removed. You're sure? I'm a doctor. I know what a bullet wound looks like. I know what an execution looks like. He met her eyes. Your husband wasn't killed in an ambush. He was murdered. Close range. Professional. Someone walked up behind him and put a bullet in his spine. The room tilted. Vivian grabbed the examination table for support. She'd known. On some level, she'd always known. But hearing it confirmed made it real in a way that hurt worse than the original grief. Why didn't you say something? She demanded. Why didn't you tell someone? Who would I tell? The town council that ordered the hit? The new sheriff who works for them? Pritchard's laugh was bitter. I'm old, Mrs. Calloway, not stupid. You're a coward, she said. Yes. He didn't deny it. I am, and I'm alive. Your husband was brave. He's dead. You choose which one you want to be. Rhett put a hand on Vivian's arm, steadying. The land purchases. Where's the proof? Caleb kept records, deeds, contracts, correspondence. Pritchard went back to his grinding. No idea where he hid them, but they exist somewhere.
They left before anyone could see them leaving together. Outside, the sun was too bright, the street too normal. People went about their business like nothing mattered, like a good man hadn't been murdered for trying to do the right thing. We need to find those records, Vivian said. We need to figure out where Caleb would have hidden them. Rhett untied his horse. Where did he go when he needed to think? When he needed to be alone? She tried to remember. Caleb had been methodical, organized. He kept his office neat, his files alphabetized, everything in its place. The office, she said. At the jail. He spent hours there. First place they would have looked. Then I don't know. He didn't have hiding places, didn't sneak around. She felt frustration building. He was honest. That was his whole problem. Honest men still keep secrets. Rhett mounted up, especially when those secrets could get them killed. They rode back to the ranch in silence. Vivian's mind spun through possibilities. Where would Caleb hide evidence? Where would he put something he needed to keep safe? And then it hit her. The house, she said. Our house. He'd hide it somewhere I could find it if something happened to him. Rhett looked at her. You sure? No, but it makes sense. He wouldn't trust anyone else. She urged her horse faster. We need to search. Everything. Floor to ceiling. They spent the next 3 hours tearing the house apart. Not violently, but thoroughly. Checking under floorboards, behind pictures, inside mattresses. Every possible hiding place. Nothing. Vivian sat on the bedroom floor surrounded by displaced furniture and wanted to scream. It's not here. Maybe he didn't hide it in the house. Then where? Rhett walked to the window, stared out at the ranch. The barn? We already looked there. Not thoroughly, and it would make sense. If he wanted to keep you away from something dangerous, he'd put it somewhere you didn't go often. They searched the barn as the sun set, climbed into the loft, checked every board, every nail, every shadowed corner. Rhett found it, a loose board in the northeast corner covered by old hay. Underneath, wrapped in oilcloth, was a leather journal and a stack of documents. Vivian's hands shook as she opened the journal. Caleb's handwriting filled the pages. Neat, precise, recording everything. Dates, names, land purchases. The amounts didn't match the sale prices. The timing didn't match the official railroad announcements. Someone had been buying land 6 months before the routes were published. Someone with inside information. Marcus Tully purchased 14 parcels between March and September, she read aloud. Total investment, $4,000. Current value, $32,000. Her voice shook. He's been stealing from the territory. Not just him. Rhett pointed to another page. Mayor Griggs, council members Patterson and Doyle, even the territorial land commissioner. It was all there. A conspiracy that reached higher than Black Hollow, higher than the county. This was corruption at the territorial level, and Caleb had documented every piece of it. This is why they killed him, Vivian said. He was going to expose them. Question is, what do we do with it now? Rhett took the journal, flipped through the pages. We can't take this to local authorities. They're part of it. And we can't take it to territorial authorities without getting ourselves killed on the way. Then what? We make copies, hide them. Then we make noise loud enough that someone with power has to pay attention. He looked at her. But once we do that, there's no going back. They'll come after us with everything they have. They're already coming after us. Not like this. Right now they're trying to drive us off, make us leave. This? He held up the journal. This is a death sentence. They won't stop until we're dead, or they are. The weight of it settled on her shoulders. This wasn't just about the ranch anymore. Wasn't just about surviving. This was about justice for Caleb, about stopping men who thought they could kill anyone who got in their way. We do it, she said. We expose them. You're sure? No. She met his eyes. But I'm doing it anyway. They spent that night making copies by lamplight. Rhett's handwriting wasn't as neat as Caleb's, but it was legible. Vivian copied the deeds, the contracts, the evidence. They made 3 complete sets. One to keep, one to hide, one to send. Who do we send it to? Vivian asked as dawn broke.
Federal Marshal in Fort Laramie. Man named Cutler, served with Caleb in the Army. If anyone will believe this, it's him. Rhett sealed the packet. But it'll take weeks for him to get it. Weeks for him to read it. More weeks for him to mobilize. We need to survive until then. How? We get help. Find people who want Tully gone as badly as we do. He stood up, stretched. And we prepare for war. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Rhett fortified the ranch like he was building a fort. Extra ammunition, reinforced shutters, clear fields of fire from every window. He moved through the work with mechanical efficiency, and Vivian realized this was what he'd done before. In other places, other fights. He knew how to prepare for siege because he'd survived sieges. Meanwhile, Vivian made quiet visits to town. Not obvious, not regular. Just often enough to drop hints, plant seeds, make people wonder. She bought supplies from the general store and mentioned she'd found some of Caleb's old files. She stopped by the church and asked Reverend Patterson if there was a way to report corruption to territorial authorities. She talked to the telegraph operator about sending messages to Fort Laramie. She didn't say what she knew, just made sure people knew she knew something. The town began to buzz with rumors. Vivian could feel it, the tension building, people looking at Tully differently, conversations stopping when council members walked by. And then, exactly 1 week after they found the evidence, Silas Creed rode into their lives. Vivian was in the barn when she heard Rhett's voice, sharp and cold in a way she'd never heard before. "You need to leave, now!" She grabbed the rifle they kept by the door and stepped outside. A man sat on a black horse near the house. Tall, broad, with a beard that reached his chest and eyes that looked like they'd seen hell and liked what they found there. "That any way to greet an old friend?" the man said. His voice was gravelly, amused. "We're not friends," Rhett said. His hand was on his gun, not drawing, just ready. "Haven't been for a long time." "That hurts, Rhett, really does." The man's gaze shifted to Vivian. "This the widow? Heard you got yourself hitched. Didn't believe it till now." "Who are you?" Vivian demanded. "Name's Silas Creed. Your husband and I used to ride together, back when he was still making sense." Creed grinned. "Back when he was still honest about what he was." "Leave," Rhett said again. "Can't do that. Got a message for you, from people who are very interested in what you've been doing lately." Creed leaned forward in his saddle. "People who know you found something that belongs to them. People who want it back. Nothing here belongs to anyone but us." "See, that's where you're wrong." Creed's smile faded. "That evidence you dug up, those records, they're worth a lot of money to a lot of people. People who will pay handsomely to get them back, or to make sure they never see daylight." "We don't have anything," Vivian said. "Don't insult my intelligence, Mrs. Calloway. Half the town's talking about how you've been asking questions, how you mentioned files, how you're planning to contact federal authorities." He shrugged. "You might as well have taken out an advertisement." Rhett's hand tightened on his gun. "You're working for Tully." "I work for whoever pays. Right now, that's a collection of very nervous men who would like this problem to go away." Creed's eyes never left Rhett. "They sent me because they know you. Know you'll listen to me when you wouldn't listen to anyone else." "I'm listening," Rhett said, "and the answer's no." "Haven't even heard the offer yet." "Don't need to. Whatever they're paying, it's not enough. They're offering $50,000, gold, plus safe passage out of the territory." Creed let that sink in. "That's more money than you'll see in 10 lifetimes out here. Enough to disappear, start fresh somewhere nobody knows your name." Vivian felt cold. $50,000 was a fortune. Enough to buy a new ranch, a new life, a future. "And if we refuse?" Rhett asked. "Then they do it the hard way. Men come, lots of men. You fight, you probably kill a few, but you lose. And when you lose, they kill you both and take the evidence anyway." Creed's voice turned almost gentle. "This isn't a fight you can win, Rhett. You know that. I know that. So why die for it?" "Because some things are worth dying for." "Like what? Justice? Revenge?" Creed shook his head. "You've gone soft. The man I knew understood that survival was all that mattered. Everything else was just noise." "Yeah, well, maybe I'm not that man anymore." "Then you're a fool." Creed straightened in his saddle.
You got 48 hours to think about it. After that, the offer expires and the hard way begins. He looked at Vivian. Convince him, Mrs. Calloway. You seem smarter than he is. He rode off before either of them could respond. Vivian watched until he disappeared over the ridge, then turned to Rhett. Who was that? Exactly who he said. Someone I used to ride with. Rhett's voice was hollow. Someone I should have killed a long time ago. He knew you, knew how you think. Yeah. Is he right? Is this a fight we can't win? Rhett was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, he didn't look at her. Probably, but that doesn't mean we stop fighting.
Why not? Why not take the money and leave? Because if we leave, they win. And if they win here, they'll win everywhere. Men like Tully, like Creed, like everyone who thinks money and power mean they can do whatever they want, they'll keep winning until someone stands up and says no. He finally looked at her. Caleb stood up. He said no. And they killed him for it. If we leave now, his death meant nothing. His death already means nothing. He's gone. No. His death means something if we make it mean something. If we finish what he started. Rhett's voice was fierce now. But I won't force you. This is your life too, your choice. If you want to take the money and run, I'll help you pack. She should have said yes, should have taken the offer. $50,000 was more than she'd ever dreamed of having. But she thought about Caleb, about how he'd died trying to do the right thing, about how men like Tully would keep killing good people as long as nobody stopped them. We stay, she said. We fight. You're sure? No, but like you said, some things are worth dying for. Something changed in Rhett's expression, not quite a smile, but close. Okay, then we prepare. The next 2 days were a countdown to disaster. They finished fortifying the ranch, sent the evidence to Fort Laramie via a trusted stagecoach driver who didn't ask questions, made their peace with what was coming. On the morning of the third day, Vivian woke before dawn, couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about what was coming. She found Rhett on the porch, already dressed, already armed. He looked different somehow, harder, like he'd put on an old skin and found it still fit. They'll come today, he said. Probably at sunset. That's when I'd do it. How many? 10, maybe 15. Creed won't come himself, not yet. He'll send men to test us, see how we respond. And if we win, then he sends more. And if we lose, we don't. He looked at her. Whatever happens today, you stay inside. You shoot anyone who gets close, but you don't come outside. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see. You can't fight 15 men alone. Watch me. Rhett, this is what I am, Vivian. This is what I do. His voice was flat, final. You wanted to fight, so we're fighting. But we're fighting my way, and my way means you stay alive, even if I don't. She wanted to argue, wanted to find another option, but the sun was rising and time was running out. Promise me something, she said. What? Promise you'll try to survive, not just fight, not just hold them off. Actually try to make it through this alive. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'll try. It wasn't much, but it was all she was going to get. They spent the day in tense preparation. Rhett checked and rechecked every gun, every position, every angle of defense. Vivian cooked food they might not live to eat and tried not to think about the men who were coming to kill them. The sun crawled across the sky like it was mocking them. Every hour felt like a week. Every shadow looked like a rider. And then, as the sun touched the horizon, they came. Not 15 men, 20, maybe more. They rode in from the north, spread out in a line, moving with the confidence of people who knew they had numbers on their side. Get inside, Rhett said. Bar the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. Rhett, go. She went. But she took her rifle to the window and watched through the shutters as Rhett walked out to meet them alone. He stood in the yard, unarmed except for the gun on his hip, and waited. The riders stopped 50 yards out. One of them rode forward. Young man, cocky, the kind who thought a gun made him dangerous. You Calloway? He called. I am. We're here for the evidence. Hand it over and we leave. Simple. Don't have it. Then where is it? Gone. Sent it to federal authorities 3 days ago.
Rhett's voice carried across the distance. Should reach Fort Laramie any day now. The young man looked back at his companions, uncertain now. You're lying. Ask yourself why I'd lie. If I still had it, I'd use it to bargain. Since I don't, I've got nothing to lose. Rhett smiled, cold, empty. Which means I can focus on killing as many of you as possible before you kill me. There's 20 of us and one of you. 21 counting you. And I've fought worse odds. Rhett's hand moved closer to his gun. Question is, which of you dies first? The young man swallowed, looked back at his companions again. And that's when everything went to hell. Someone in the back fired. A nervous shot. Wild. It missed Rhett by a foot, but it was enough. Rhett drew. Vivian had never seen him move like that. Hadn't known a person could move like that. His gun was just there, in his hand, firing before the sound of the first shot had finished echoing. The young man went down. Then another rider. Then another. The rest scattered, returning fire, and suddenly the yard was full of bullets and screaming horses and dying men. Rhett moved through it like smoke, never still, never where the bullets were. He fired with mechanical precision, each shot finding flesh, and Vivian realized why people called him the Ghost. Because he fought like something already dead, something that couldn't be killed. She fired from the window, didn't think, just aimed and squeezed. A rider went down, then another. She didn't know if she'd killed them, didn't want to know. The fight lasted maybe 3 minutes, felt like hours. When it ended, 7 men were dead in the yard. The rest were running, retreating over the ridge like demons were chasing them. Rhett stood in the middle of the carnage, breathing hard, blood on his shirt. Not all of it his. Vivian ran outside before she could stop herself. Are you hurt? Graze. Nothing serious. He reloaded his gun with shaking hands. You okay? I think so. She looked at the bodies, felt sick. Is it over? No, this was just the first wave. He started dragging bodies away from the house. They'll come back, more of them, better prepared. How many more times can we do this? As many as it takes. But his voice said what he wouldn't, not many. Maybe one more fight, maybe 2. Then numbers would win. They spent the night on watch. Vivian dozed in a chair while Rhett stood at the window, gun in hand, waiting. When dawn came without another attack, she almost cried from relief. They're regrouping, Rhett said. Planning. Next time will be worse. How much worse? They'll burn us out, wait until we run out of ammunition or hope, then finish us. So we're just waiting to die. We're waiting for help. He turned to look at her. The evidence reached Fort Laramie yesterday. I paid the stage driver extra to confirm. Marshal Cutler will read it. He'll mobilize. He just needs time. How much time? Week, maybe 2. We don't have 2 weeks. Then we make do with what we have. That afternoon, someone unexpected appeared on the ridge. Not riders, a single wagon. Vivian grabbed her rifle, but Rhett stopped her. Wait. The wagon came closer. Martha Hendricks drove it, her face set in grim determination. Behind her, 3 more wagons followed. What's she doing? Vivian breathed. Picking a side. Martha pulled up near the house and climbed down. Behind her, Vivian recognized faces. The rancher who'd worked with Caleb, the telegraph operator, the widow from the boarding house, others she'd talked to, others who'd been too afraid to speak. We heard about the fight, Martha said. Figured you could use supplies. She gestured to the wagons. Food, ammunition, medical supplies, and something else. What? Us. The rancher stepped forward. Older man, gray-haired, carrying a rifle like he knew how to use it. We're tired of Tully and his cronies running this town. Tired of being afraid. You're making a stand. We're standing with you. Vivian felt tears sting her eyes. You don't have to do this. Yeah, we do. The telegraph operator was young, maybe 25, with hands scarred from burns. Caleb was a good man. He deserved better than what he got. We all do. How many? Rhett asked. 8 of us who can shoot. Maybe 5 more who can reload and 10 wounded. Martha met his eyes. Not an army, but better than nothing. It's a start. Rhett helped unload supplies. Thank you. That night their ranch transformed. What had been an isolated fortress became something else. A gathering place. a headquarters. People shared stories about Caleb, about things Tully had done, about corruption they'd witnessed but been too afraid to report. He bought my land for half what it was worth, the rancher said. His name was Coleman, and his hands shook when he talked about it. Threatened to have me arrested for rustling if I didn't sell. My own cattle. He was going to call them stolen. He fired my brother for refusing to falsify telegraph records, the operator, his name was Davis, added. Made it look like messages never arrived, covered up deals. Everyone had a story. Everyone had been hurt. And now they were ready to hurt back. We need a plan, Vivian said. Tully will send more men. We can't just keep defending. Agreed. Rhett stood up. We need to take the fight to them. Hit Tully where he lives. Make him react instead of us. Hit him how? Coleman asked. His ranch, his property, his money. Rhett's smile was cold. Men like Tully only understand loss. So we make him lose things. Make it hurt. That's dangerous, Martha said. Everything's dangerous now. At least this gives us a chance. They planned through the night. Rhett had experience with raids, with quick strikes, with the kind of guerrilla warfare that turned numbers upside down. They'd split into teams, hit multiple properties at once, not kill anyone, yet, but destroy infrastructure, burn barns, scatter cattle, cut fences, make Tully spread his forces thin trying to protect everything. And while he's distracted, Rhett said, we gather more people, make more noise, force territorial authorities to pay attention. It was risky. It was probably insane, but it was better than waiting to die. They moved the next night. 3 teams. Rhett led one, Coleman another, Davis the third. Vivian stayed behind with Martha and the others to defend the ranch if Tully retaliated. She spent the night pacing, watching the horizon, praying, though she wasn't sure to who, that Rhett would come back alive. He did, just before dawn, covered in soot and grinning like a wolf. Well, she demanded, burned 2 of Tully's hay barns, scattered about 50 head of his cattle, cut every fence on his north property. He was breathing hard, alive with adrenaline. Coleman's team hit the mayor's ranch. Davis's team destroyed the land office records that weren't already copied. Anyone hurt? No, we moved fast. Got out before anyone could respond. He sobered. But now they know we're not just defending. They know we'll hit back. Will that make them more cautious or more aggressive? Both. Which is exactly what we want. Over the next week, the pattern repeated. Quick strikes, fast retreats. They hit properties, destroyed supplies, made it expensive to be corrupt in Black Hollow. And slowly, the town began to change. People who'd been silent started talking, started asking questions, started demanding answers from the council. And Tully, for the first time, looked worried, but worry made him dangerous. On the 8th day after the raid started, Silas Creed returned. This time, he didn't come to talk. He came with an army. Vivian saw them first. She'd been checking the north fence line when movement on the horizon caught her eye. Not 3 riders, not 10. 30 at least, maybe more, spread across the ridge like a dark stain bleeding across the prairie. She ran. Didn't waste time counting, didn't waste breath shouting, just ran back to the ranch house where Rhett was showing Coleman and Davis how to reinforce the barn doors with scrap iron. They're coming, she gasped. At least 30. Maybe more. Rhett didn't ask questions, just moved. Everyone inside. Now. Coleman, you and your people take the barn. Davis, put your shooters in the house. Martha, get everyone who can't fight into the root cellar. People scattered. The careful organization they'd built over the past week turned into controlled chaos. Vivian grabbed ammunition boxes and started distributing them to windows. Her hands shook. She couldn't stop them. Rhett caught her wrist. Breathe. There's too many. There's always too many. We make do with what we have. He checked his gun for maybe the 100th time that day. You remember what I taught you about aiming low? Aim for center mass. Compensate for distance. Good. And if they breach the house? Fall back to the bedroom. Barricade. Don't stop shooting. That's my girl. He let go of her wrist, turned to address everyone in the house. Listen up. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they're in range. Nobody fires until I do. We make every shot count. We don't panic, and we don't give up. Understood?
A chorus of shaky agreements. These weren't soldiers, weren't gunfighters, just townspeople who'd finally had enough of being afraid. They were going to die here. Vivian knew it, could see it in their faces, but they were going to die fighting, and somehow that mattered. The riders came slowly, deliberately. They knew they had numbers, knew they had time. Why rush when you could savor the fear? Silas Creed rode at the front. Even from a distance, Vivian could see his beard, his bulk, the casual way he sat his horse like he was out for a Sunday ride. They stopped 100 yards out, just beyond effective rifle range. Creed dismounted, walked forward alone until he was maybe 70 yards from the house. "Rhett," he called. His voice carried on the cold wind. "We doing this the hard way then?" "Looks like." "Didn't have to be. Could have taken the money. Could have lived." Creed shook his head. "Now a lot of people are going to die, including you." "I've been dying for years," Rhett called back. "This is just the day it finally takes." "And all these people with you? They dying too?" "They chose to be here." "Did they? Or did you convince them they could win?" Creed's smile was visible even at this distance. "Because they can't. You know it. I know it. But they're going to find out the hard way." Rhett didn't respond, just waited. Creed turned and walked back to his men, mounted up, raised his hand. "Here we go," Rhett said quietly. The first wave hit like thunder. 20 riders. They came fast, firing from horseback, bullets tearing through shutters and wood and air. The house shook with the impact. Rhett fired. Someone in the attacking line went down. Coleman fired from the barn. Another rider fell. Then everyone was shooting, the world turning into smoke and noise and the copper taste of fear. Vivian aimed through the window gap, squeezed the trigger. A rider jerked but stayed in the saddle. She fired again. This time he fell. She'd just killed someone. Second person in her life. Maybe third if her first shot in the earlier fight had been fatal. The thought should have horrified her. Instead, she just felt numb, reloaded, aimed again. The first wave broke against their defense. 6 riders down. The rest retreated out of range. "Reload," Rhett ordered. "Check your ammunition. Anyone hurt?" "Davis took a splinter in the face," someone called from upstairs. "But he's still shooting." "Good. They'll try again in a minute. Be ready." The second wave came from 2 directions. Riders from the north and west, forcing them to split their fire. It was smarter, more coordinated. 2 men made it to the barn. Coleman shot one through the door gap. The other got inside. Vivian heard the gunfire, heard someone scream, then silence. "Coleman!" Rhett shouted. "Status!" "We're good. Got him." Coleman's voice was shaky. "Lost Jenkins, though. Took a bullet through the throat. First casualty on their side." Vivian felt her stomach turn. Jenkins had been the shopkeeper, had 2 kids, had just wanted Tully gone so he could run his business without paying protection money. Now he was dead in a barn, bleeding out on hay. "Hold position," Rhett said. His voice was steady. Had to be. Everyone else was falling apart. "They're testing us. Trying to find weak points." The third wave was different. They didn't charge. They fired from distance, methodical, professional, trying to pin them down while other riders circled to the east. "They're flanking," Vivian said. "I see it." Rhett moved to the east window, fired twice. "Martha, get everyone in the root cellar now. This is about to get worse." He was right. The flanking riders hit the back of the house, broke through the kitchen door before anyone could stop them. Vivian turned, rifle up, and came face to face with a man twice her size. He had his gun aimed at her chest. Time slowed. She saw his finger tighten on the trigger. Then Rhett was there, moved between them, his gun pressed against the man's skull. "Drop it," Rhett said. The man hesitated, calculated odds, decided wrong. Rhett fired. The man's head snapped back. He dropped like someone had cut his strings. Another rider came through the door. Rhett shot him too, then grabbed Vivian and pulled her behind the overturned table they'd been using as cover. "You okay?" "He was going to kill me." "But he didn't." Rhett reloaded. "Stay behind me. Don't move unless I move." The fight inside the house was brutal. Close quarters. No room for mistakes. Rhett fought like something mechanical, efficient. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Every shot was fatal. But there were too many. They kept coming, kept pushing. "Fall back," Rhett ordered. "Everyone upstairs. Now."
They retreated up the narrow staircase. It was a better defensive position, harder to rush, but it also meant they were trapped. Coleman and his remaining people abandoned the barn, made a desperate run for the house. 3 of them made it, 2 didn't. "We're down to 12, Coleman said. His face was pale, blood on his shirt from a graze across his ribs. "How many are they?" "More than 12, Rhett said. He was bleeding too, shoulder wound. He barely seemed to notice. "But we're in a bottleneck now. They have to come upstairs. That's an advantage." "An advantage that lasts until we run out of ammunition," Davis said. "Which will be soon. Then we make every shot count." They held the stairs for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Bodies piled up at the bottom, men who'd thought this would be easy, who'd thought numbers alone would win. They learned different, but Rhett was right about the ammunition. They were running low. Vivian was down to her last handful of bullets. Others were worse. "We need to break out," Coleman said. "Make a run for it." "Run where?" Rhett asked. "Prairie's open for miles. They'll ride us down." "So we just wait to die?" "We wait for an opening." Rhett peered through the gap in the shutters. "They're getting cautious. Too many losses. Creed's probably rethinking his approach." He was. They could hear shouting outside. Arguments. Someone saying this wasn't worth it. Someone else saying they'd already lost too many to quit now. Then Silas Creed's voice, loud and clear. "Burn them out. Burn the whole place." Vivian's blood turned cold. Fire was the one thing they couldn't fight, the one thing that would force them into the open. "We need to leave," she said. "Now." "Not yet." Rhett was still watching. "They have to get close to set the fire. When they do, we make our move." "What move? There's 30 of them. 20 now, maybe less." He checked his gun. 4 bullets left. "When the fire starts, they'll expect us to run out the front. We go out the back. Through the kitchen window. Davis, you and your people cover us. Coleman, you lead the escape. Get everyone to the horses." "Where are the horses?" "Still in the barn. If we're lucky, they haven't killed them yet." "And if we're not lucky?" "We run, far as we can, fast as we can. Some of us make it." Rhett met everyone's eyes. "Or none of us do. But at least we don't burn." Smoke started seeping through the floorboards. They were doing it, actually burning the house. Vivian thought about everything inside, Caleb's things, her memories, the life she'd built, gone. All of it going up in flames. "Now," Rhett said. They moved. Davis and 2 others stayed at the top of the stairs, firing down to keep the attackers pinned. Everyone else went out the back window, dropping into the dirt, running for the barn through smoke and bullets and chaos. Someone next to Vivian screamed, went down. She didn't stop to check who, just kept running. The barn was on fire too. Of course it was. They'd thought of everything. The horses were panicked, kicking at their stalls. Coleman got 2 out. Vivian grabbed a 3rd. Rhett was right behind her. "Mount up," he shouted. "Ride north. Don't stop. Don't look back." "What about you?" "I'll catch up." "Rhett, go." She went. Didn't have a choice. The barn was collapsing. The smoke was too thick. She mounted and kicked her horse into a gallop, riding blind through the chaos. Behind her, she heard gunfire. Heard men screaming, heard Rhett's gun firing with mechanical precision. Then an explosion. The barn's ammunition store going up. The blast wave knocked her sideways. She barely stayed in the saddle. When she looked back, the ranch was an inferno. Both buildings consumed, flames reaching for the sky like accusing fingers, and no sign of Rhett. She pulled up, started to turn back. Coleman grabbed her reins. He said, "Don't stop. He's still in there. And if you go back, you die too." He knew that. That's why he stayed. Coleman's face was hard. "We honor him by surviving." Vivian wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but more riders were coming. She could hear them. They had maybe seconds before they were run down. She kicked her horse, rode after the others, tears streaming down her face from smoke or grief or both. They rode for miles. Didn't stop until the horses were ready to collapse. When they finally pulled up in a shallow ravine, Vivian counted heads. 7. Out of 15 who'd started the day. Coleman, Davis, Martha. 3 others whose names she barely knew, and no Rhett. "We need to keep moving," Coleman said. "They'll track us." "Where?" Vivian's voice was hollow. "Where do we go?" "Fort Laramie. That's where you sent the evidence. That's where the federal marshal is. He looked at the others. We ride hard. We get there before Tully can send word to intercept us. We tell them everything. And if they don't believe us, then we die. Davis checked his gun. 2 bullets left. But at least we die trying. They rode through the night, slow enough to spare the horses, fast enough to stay ahead of pursuit. Vivian felt numb. Couldn't process what had happened. The ranch was gone. Half their people were dead. Rhett was dead. She'd known him for less than 3 months, hadn't even liked him at first. But somewhere between the forced marriage and the last stand, he'd become something important, something that mattered. And now he was gone. Dawn came cold and gray. They stopped to rest the horses and drink from a creek. Nobody talked. What was there to say? Martha sat beside Vivian. I'm sorry. For what? Your husband, Rhett, he saved us all. Didn't save himself. Maybe he wasn't trying to. Martha's voice was quiet. Men like that, they don't expect to survive. They just try to make their death count for something. I didn't want his death. I wanted him alive. I know. Martha squeezed her hand, but wanting and getting are different things out here. They mounted up again, kept riding. Fort Laramie was still days away. They had no food, little ammunition, horses that were nearly broken, but they kept moving. On the second day, they heard riders behind them, distant but getting closer. They found our trail, Coleman said. We need to hide. Where? The prairie stretched empty in every direction. No cover, no shelter, just grass and sky and nowhere to hide. There, Davis pointed to a cluster of rocks maybe a mile north. Not much, but better than nothing. They made it to the rocks with maybe 10 minutes to spare. Dismounted, found what positions they could, waited. 6 riders appeared on the horizon. Professional, armed, moving with the confidence of men who knew they had their prey cornered. We can't fight them, Martha said. We have maybe 20 bullets between us. Then we surrender, one of the others said. Young man named Price. He'd lost his father in the barn fire. Maybe they'll let us go. They won't. Vivian checked her rifle. 3 bullets. They'll kill us and say we died in the fire. Nobody will know different. So we fight? We fight. The riders came closer, 50 yards, 40, close enough to see faces. Then gunfire, but not from the riders, from behind them. Someone else was shooting, someone on horseback, moving fast. One rider went down, then another. Who is that? Coleman breathed. Vivian stood up, squinted against the sun. The rider was tall, broad, moving with familiar efficiency. Rhett, she whispered. Then louder. Rhett! He heard her, changed direction, rode straight at them while continuing to fire at the pursuing riders. 2 more went down, the last 2 broke off. Retreated. Rhett pulled up at the rocks. Dismounted. He was burned. Bloody. Barely standing. You're alive, Vivian said stupidly. Mostly. He swayed, caught himself on a rock. Went out through the barn loft just before it collapsed. Lost my horse. Stole one from the attackers. Been tracking you since. You're hurt. I'm alive. That's what matters. He looked at the others. Everyone okay? Alive, Coleman said. That's about all we can claim. Good enough. Rhett accepted water from Davis. Drank like he'd been in a desert. We need to keep moving. Those riders will bring friends. You can barely stand, Martha said. I can ride. That's enough. He looked at Vivian. How far to Fort Laramie? 2 days if we push hard. Then we push hard. They rode. Rhett stayed in the saddle through sheer willpower. Vivian watched him constantly, waiting for him to fall. He never did. Just kept moving, kept breathing, kept surviving because survival was what he did. On the 3rd day, they saw the fort. Wooden walls. American flag. Salvation or damnation depending on whether anyone believed them. They rode in slowly, hands visible, making no threatening moves. Soldiers met them at the gate. We're here to see Marshal Cutler, Coleman said. Marshall's not here. Left 2 days ago. Vivian felt her heart sink. Left? Where? Black Hollow. Got some report about corruption. Took 20 men and rode out to investigate.
The soldier looked them over. You folks look like you've had a rough time. You could say that, Rhett said. We're from Black Hollow. We're the ones who sent that report. Then you're going the wrong direction. Marshall's already handling it.
They'd done it. The evidence had reached the right person. Someone was actually doing something.
We need horses, Vivian said. Supplies. We have to get back. Back? Thought you were running away. We were. But if the marshal's in Black Hollow, he'll need witnesses. He'll need people who can testify. She looked at the others. We have to go back. Are you insane? Davis demanded. We barely made it out alive. You want to ride back into that?
The marshal doesn't know what he's walking into, doesn't know how many men Tully has, doesn't know about Silas Creed. She turned to Rhett. We have to warn him. Rhett looked at her for a long moment, then smiled, tired, pained, but real. Yeah, he said. We do. The fort commander tried to stop them, said they were too beat up, too exhausted, said riding back was suicide. He was probably right, but they did it anyway. The commander gave them fresh horses, ammunition, medical supplies, even sent 4 soldiers with them as escort. It wasn't enough for a fight, but it was something. They rode back toward Black Hollow, toward danger, toward the place that had tried so hard to kill them. But this time they weren't running. This time they were riding toward something instead of away. On the second day they met the marshal, or what was left of his men. They'd been ambushed 10 miles from Black Hollow. Hit by overwhelming force, the marshal and 5 of his men had made it out. The rest were dead. Cutler? Rhett asked. A middle-aged man with gray hair and a bullet wound in his leg nodded. That's me. Who are you? Rhett Calloway. This is Vivian Calloway. We sent you the evidence that almost got us killed. Cutler grimaced as someone bandaged his leg. We rode in expecting cooperation, got gunfire instead. They were waiting for us. They knew you were coming, Coleman said. Someone warned them. More than that, they had 40 men ready, professional gunfighters. This isn't some local corruption. This is organized. Cutler looked at Vivian. Your husband documented enough to hang everyone involved. Question is whether we can get to them before they disappear. They won't disappear, Rhett said. Tully's too arrogant. He thinks he won. Thinks he killed everyone who could testify against him. Did he? Not quite. Rhett gestured to their group. We're still here. 7 people against 40 trained killers. Those are terrible odds. We've survived worse. Rhett checked his gun. Reloaded it for maybe the 1,000th time. And we know the territory. Know where Tully will be. Know how to get to him. You're suggesting we attack? With 12 men total? I'm suggesting we don't let him win. Not after everything we've lost. Rhett's voice was hard. We go in, we arrest him and everyone involved. And if they fight, we fight back harder. Cutler studied him. You're the ghost of Bitter Creek. Was. Now I'm just a man trying to do one right thing before I die. That one right thing might get us all killed. Then we die doing something that matters. Rhett looked at the others. Anyone who wants to leave, leave now. No judgment. This isn't your fight. Nobody moved. Even Davis, who'd complained the whole way, just checked his gun and said nothing. All right then, Cutler said. We do this the hard way. They made plans. Strategy. Coordinated assault. They'd hit Black Hollow at dawn. Arrest the council members before they could organize resistance. Use speed and surprise to offset numbers. It was a terrible plan. Had maybe a 30% chance of working. They did it anyway. The ride into Black Hollow was the longest of Vivian's life. Every shadow looked like an ambush, every sound like gunfire. But they made it to the edge of town as dawn broke, pink and gold light turning everything soft, peaceful, like the town wasn't built on blood and corruption. Tully's ranch is north, Coleman whispered. Mayor's office is in the center. Where do we hit first? Both. Cutler divided them into teams. I'll take the mayor. Calloway, you take Tully. Everyone else covers our escape routes. What about Silas Creed? Vivian asked. What about him? He's the real muscle, the real threat. If we don't stop him, he'll rally Tully's men and hunt us down. You know where he is? Vivian thought about it. Where would a man like Creed go after a victory? Where would he feel safe? The saloon, she said. He'll be celebrating, drinking,
probably with half the hired guns. Then we hit him first. Rhett looked at Cutler. You go for the officials. We handle Creed. That way the head and the muscle both get taken down.
That leaves you with 4 people against how many? Doesn't matter. We're doing it anyway. Cutler looked like he wanted to argue, then just nodded. Don't get killed. No promises. They split up. Cutler and his men rode toward the town center. Rhett, Vivian, Martha, and Davis headed for the saloon. It was early. Most of town still asleep. A few people on the streets. They stared at Vivian and Rhett like they were seeing ghosts. Maybe they were. Maybe they died in that fire, and this was just the echo of them, coming back to finish what they started. The saloon doors were closed. No sound from inside. Rhett dismounted. Checked his gun one more time. How do we play this? Davis asked. We walk in, we identify Creed, we arrest him. Rhett's smile was cold. And if he resists, we shoot him. That's murder. That's justice. You want to debate philosophy? Do it after we're done. They went in through the front door, fast, surprising anyone inside. The saloon wasn't empty. A dozen men sat at tables. Guns close. Bottles closer. They looked up as Rhett and the others entered. Silas Creed sat at the back table. Cards spread in front of him. Money piled high. Well, he said slowly, look what crawled out of the ashes. It's over, Creed, Rhett said. Federal marshals here. Evidence is public. You lost. Did I? Creed stood up slowly, his hand near his gun. Seems to me I'm still breathing, still free, still winning. You killed innocent people, burned them alive. I killed people who got in the way. There's a difference. Creed's smile was ugly. And now you're in the way again. Only this time, there's no escape. His men started standing, hands moving toward weapons. The math was simple. 4 against 12, bad odds. Last chance, Rhett said. Surrender and live, fight and die. You always were terrible at bluffing. Creed's hand moved toward his gun. Everything happened at once. Rhett drew, shot Creed in the chest before he'd cleared leather. The old gunfighter went down hard. Then chaos. Everyone shooting. The saloon turning into a slaughterhouse. Vivian fired until her gun was empty. Reloaded with shaking hands. Fired again. Men fell. Too many men, but they kept coming. Davis went down. Took a bullet through the stomach. Kept shooting from the floor until he stopped moving. Martha took cover behind the bar. Firing methodically, efficiently, like she'd been doing this all her life instead of sewing dresses. Rhett fought like he was trying to die. Walked through the bullets. Shot anyone who moved. His face was empty. Mechanical. The ghost earning his name. And then, suddenly, it was quiet. Bodies everywhere, blood on the floor, the smell of gunpowder and death. Vivian stood in the middle of it, alive. Shocked she was alive. Everyone okay? Rhett asked. Davis is dead, Martha said. Her voice was flat. Everyone else is bleeding but standing. Rhett walked to where Creed had fallen. The old outlaw was still breathing, barely. Should have taken the money, Creed wheezed. Blood bubbled on his lips. Should have run when you had the chance, Maybe. Rhett knelt beside him. But then I wouldn't have been able to do this. Do what? Watch you die knowing you lost. Creed tried to laugh. Choked on blood instead. His eyes went empty. Outside they heard more gunfire. Cutler's team. Fighting at the mayor's office. We need to help them, Vivian said. They ran through town. Toward the sound of battle. Toward the end of this nightmare, one way or another. Cutler had Tully and the mayor pinned in the land office. But more of Tully's men had arrived. The marshal was surrounded. Rhett didn't hesitate. He ran straight into the crossfire like bullets were suggestions instead of death. Vivian followed because staying behind meant watching him die alone, and she'd lost too much already to lose him now. They hit Tully's reinforcements from behind. The surprise was total. 3 men went down before they even knew someone was shooting. The rest turned, confused, caught between Cutler's position and this new threat. Federal Marshal, Cutler shouted from inside the land office. Drop your weapons and you live. Fight and you die here. For a moment, nobody moved. The hired guns looked at each other, calculating odds, weighing loyalty against survival. Then one of them dropped his rifle, then another. Within seconds, Half of them were surrendering. The other half decided to fight. The battle was brief and brutal. Vivian took cover behind a water trough and fired at anyone still shooting. Martha was beside her, reloading with hands that shook but never stopped moving. Rhett was in the middle of the street, standing like he was daring someone to hit him. Someone did. Bullet caught him in the side, spun him around. He went to one knee. "Rhett!" Vivian started to run to him. "Stay down!" he shouted back, then stood up, fired twice. The man who'd shot him dropped. The last of the resistance collapsed. Men throwing down weapons, hands in the air. The street went quiet except for the ringing in everyone's ears and the groaning of the wounded. Cutler emerged from the land office, pushing Marcus Tully ahead of him. The cattle baron's face was purple with rage. "This is illegal," Tully sputtered. "You have no authority here. I'll have your badge for this." "My authority comes from the territorial governor himself." Cutler shoved him toward one of the soldiers. "And you'll have a hard time taking my badge from prison. You can't prove anything." "I can prove everything. Your land purchases, your insider trading, the murder you ordered." Cutler looked at Vivian. "We have witnesses. We have documents. We have enough to hang you twice over." Tully's eyes found Vivian. The rage in them turned to something uglier. "You. This is all because of you. Couldn't just accept what was offered. Had to make trouble." "You killed my husband," Vivian said quietly. "You murdered a good man because he found out what you were doing. Your husband was a fool, couldn't see the bigger picture, couldn't understand that progress requires sacrifice. Progress." The word came out like poison. "You call stealing progress? You call murder progress?" "I call it business. I call it the way the world works." Tully's smile was ugly. "And when my lawyers are done, I'll call it temporary. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? In 6 months, I'll be free, and you'll still be the widow who married a killer and lost everything." Rhett walked up behind Tully, moved so quietly the man didn't hear him coming. When he spoke, his voice was right in Tully's ear. "You're wrong about one thing. She didn't lose everything." He grabbed Tully's shoulder, spun him around. "She's got me, and I'm not the forgiving type." Tully's face went pale. "You can't touch me. I'm under arrest." "Yeah, you are." Rhett stepped back. "Which means you'll face trial, face justice, maybe even hang." His smile was cold. "I'd have just shot you. Count yourself lucky you get the civilized version." Cutler's men rounded up the rest of Tully's people. The mayor was already in custody, along with 2 council members. Patterson, the one who'd performed the wedding, tried to run and got tackled by Coleman. "That's most of them," Cutler said. "But the land commissioner is still missing. So is the deputy who was on Tully's payroll." "They probably ran when they heard the shooting," Martha said. "Could be anywhere by now. We'll find them. Once word gets out about the arrests, someone will talk. Someone always talks." Cutler looked around at the damaged town. Bodies being carried away, windows broken, the saloon still smoking from the gunfight. "Hell of a morning." "Hell of a 3 months," Vivian said. People were starting to emerge from their homes. Cautious. Uncertain. They looked at the arrests, at the bodies, at Vivian and Rhett standing in the middle of it all. "Is it over?" someone called from a doorway. "It's over," Cutler said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "The corruption in Black Hollow is finished. The territorial government will be sending a new sheriff, new officials, people who aren't thieves." A few people cheered. Most just looked relieved. They'd been living under Tully's thumb for so long they didn't know how to feel about freedom. Reverend Patterson pushed through the crowd. His face was gray, sick-looking. "Mrs. Calloway," he said, "I owe you an apology. I knew. Not everything, but I knew something was wrong. And I did nothing." "You were scared," Vivian said. "Everyone was." "That's no excuse. Your husband came to me, asked me to keep records safe. I refused. I was too afraid." His voice cracked. "If I'd helped him, maybe he'd still be alive. Or maybe you'd both be dead." She was too tired for anger, too tired for anything but the truth. "Caleb made his choice. You made yours. We all have to live with what we chose." Patterson looked like he wanted to say more. Instead, he just nodded and walked away. Shoulders bent like he was carrying a weight nobody else could see. Cutler organized the prisoners for transport. 20 men total, counting the ones from the saloon. They'd need a whole wagon train to get them all to territorial prison. "I'll need you to testify," Cutler said to Vivian. All of you. At the trial. When? Few months probably. Territory will want to make an example of this, show that corruption won't be tolerated. He paused. It'll be public. Everyone will be watching. You ready for that? No. She looked at Rhett. He was leaning against a post, holding his bleeding side, looking like he might fall over any second. But we'll do it anyway. Good, because your testimony is what makes this case. Without you, it's just documents and dead men. Cutler gestured to one of his soldiers. Get a doctor for Calloway. Man's bleeding out. Doc Pritchard appeared, looking old and ashamed. He examined Rhett's wound without meeting anyone's eyes. Bullet went through, he said quietly. Missed anything vital. You'll live. Always do, Rhett said, then passed out. They carried him to the doctor's office, laid him on the examination table. Pritchard worked in silence, cleaning and stitching while Vivian watched. I should have spoken up sooner, Pritchard said. Not to anyone in particular, just saying it. I should have helped when it mattered. You're helping now, Martha said. She was helping with the bandages, her dressmaker's hand steady and sure. That's something. It's not enough. It never is. Martha tied off a bandage. But it's what we have, so it has to be enough. Rhett woke up 3 hours later, groggy, in pain, but alive. Did we win? He asked. We survived, Vivian said. That's close enough. Good. He tried to sit up, failed. The ranch? Gone. Burned to the ground. Everything? Everything. She held his hand, surprising herself. When had that become natural? But we're alive. That's more than Tully wanted. He was quiet for a moment. Then, we can rebuild. Can we? Yeah, we've got nothing left to lose. That makes us dangerous. His smile was tired but real. Besides, I'm not done being married to you yet. We could end it. The marriage. You paid your debt to Caleb. More than paid it. Is that what you want? She thought about it. Really thought about it. This man who'd been a stranger forced on her by cruel laws, who'd become something else, something that felt essential. No, she said, I don't want to end it. Good, because neither do I. Martha cleared her throat from the doorway. Hate to interrupt, but Cutler wants to talk, says it's important. The marshal was outside talking to Coleman. He looked worried. Problem? Rhett asked. He'd insisted on walking despite Pritchard's protests. Now he leaned against the wall like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Maybe. Got a telegram from the territorial capital. Governor wants to meet with you both, personally. Why? Didn't say. But when the governor asks, you go. Cutler folded the telegram. It's a 3-day ride. You think you can manage? I'll manage, Rhett said. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. I'll provide escort. Cutler looked at Vivian. You should bring the evidence. All of it. Original documents. Why? Because the governor will want to see it, and because I don't trust leaving it here with Tully's friends still running loose. That made sense. Too much sense. Vivian didn't like it. Something you're not saying, Rhett observed. Yeah. Cutler glanced around, making sure nobody was listening. There's talk in the capital, rumors that this corruption goes higher than Black Hollow. The territorial officials are involved, maybe even the governor's office. Then why would the governor want to meet us? Maybe because he wants to fix it, or maybe because he wants to make sure we don't talk to anyone else first. Cutler's face was grim. Either way, we need to be careful. This isn't over yet. They spent that night in what was left of Black Hollow. The town felt different now, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. People who'd been afraid were talking in the streets, planning, hoping. Vivian walked through town alone, looking at the places she'd lived for 3 years. The general store where she'd bought supplies. The church where she'd married Caleb, then Rhett. The land office where this nightmare had started. Someone called her name. She turned to find a young woman holding a baby. Mrs. Calloway, I wanted to thank you. For what? For standing up, for fighting back. The woman's eyes were wet. My husband worked for Tully, was killed when he tried to quit. They said it was an accident, but we all knew. She adjusted the baby in her arms. I couldn't do anything.
Couldn't even speak his name without getting threatened. But you did. You made them pay. It cost a lot of people their lives. Living under Tully's rule was costing us our lives anyway, just slower. The woman smiled. At least now my daughter will grow up in a town where justice means something. She walked away before Vivian could respond, left her standing in the street, wondering if any of this had been worth it. She found Rhett back at the doctor's office, refusing to rest, packing supplies for the trip tomorrow. "You should be in bed," she said. "I've been in bed for 6 hours. That's plenty." He winced as he bent to pick up a saddlebag. "We need to be ready to leave at dawn." "About that. Do you trust Cutler?" "I trust that he wants to do the right thing. Whether he can is a different question." Rhett set the bag down. "You worried about the governor?" "I'm worried about everything. We just exposed a massive conspiracy, made powerful enemies. Now we're riding into the Capitol with all the evidence." She sat down on the examination table. "Feels like walking into a trap." "Might be. But it's a trap we have to walk into anyway." He came to stand in front of her. "We could run, take what money we have, disappear into Kansas or Colorado, start over somewhere nobody knows us." "Is that what you want?" "I want you safe. Everything else is negotiable. I'm not running anymore. We finish this. We testify. We make sure Caleb's death meant something." She looked up at him. "Even if it kills us." "Probably will." He smiled. "But at least we'll die for something that matters." They left at dawn with an escort of 8 soldiers. Cutler rode point. Coleman and Martha came too, along with 2 other survivors from the ranch battle. Safety in numbers, though Vivian suspected no amount of numbers would help if the territorial government decided they were a threat. The ride to the Capitol was tense. Everyone watching the horizons. Everyone expecting an ambush that never came. On the second day, they passed through a small settlement. People there had already heard about Black Hollow, about the corruption, about the widow, and the gunfighter who'd brought it all down. "You're famous," Coleman said. "Or infamous. Not sure which." "Don't care which," Vivian said. "Just want this to be over." "It's never over." Rhett was riding beside her, still moving stiff from his wound, but too stubborn to complain. "We win this fight, there'll be another one. That's how the frontier works. You just keep fighting until you can't anymore." "That's a depressing way to look at life." "It's an honest way." He glanced at her. "You want pretty lies or ugly truths?" "I want something in between, something that doesn't make me want to give up." "Then make your own truth. Decide what you're fighting for, and don't let anyone take it from you." He looked ahead at the road stretching toward the Capitol. "That's what I'm doing." "And what are you fighting for?" "You." He said it simply. "Everything else can burn, but I'm keeping you alive." The words should have sounded dramatic, overblown. Instead, they just sounded true. They reached the territorial capital on the evening of the 3rd day. It was bigger than Black Hollow, more permanent. Stone buildings instead of wood, paved streets instead of dirt. The kind of place that thought it was civilized because it had a theater and a bank. The governor's mansion sat on a hill overlooking the city. White columns, manicured lawn, the kind of place that screamed power and money. Cutler led them through gates guarded by soldiers, past gardens that probably cost more to maintain than most people made in a year, to a door where a man in a fine suit waited. "Marshal Cutler, right on time." The man's smile was professional, empty. "And these must be the witnesses. Come in. The governor is expecting you." They were shown to a study that looked like something from a storybook. Books lining the walls, mahogany desk, portraits of stern men staring down at everyone. The governor himself was younger than Vivian expected, maybe 50, well-dressed, handsome in a way that suggested he'd never worked a hard day in his life. "Mrs. Calloway, Mr. Calloway." He came around the desk to shake hands. "Thank you for making the journey. I know you've been through an ordeal." "Ordeal's one word for it," Rhett said. He didn't shake the offered hand. "Why are we here?" "Straight to business. I appreciate that." The governor went back behind his desk. "You've exposed corruption in Black Hollow, provided evidence of a conspiracy that reaches into the territorial government itself. That's commendable. It's also dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Vivian asked. "Dangerous because the men you've implicated are powerful. They have friends, allies.
People who will do anything to protect them. The governor steepled his fingers. If this goes to trial, it will tear the territory apart, create instability, maybe even violence. So what are you suggesting? Cutler's voice was hard. That we let them go? Pretend it didn't happen? I'm suggesting we be smart about how we proceed. The governor pulled out a document. I'm prepared to offer immunity to Mrs. Calloway and her compatriots. Full pardons for any actions taken during the conflict. Protection. New identities if necessary. In exchange, you turn over the evidence and let the territorial government handle prosecution internally. Internally. Rhett's laugh was cold. You mean quietly. You mean make it go away. I mean handle it in a way that doesn't destabilize the entire territory. We'll still prosecute, still punish the guilty, but we'll do it without the spectacle of a public trial. And we're supposed to trust you? Vivian couldn't keep the anger from her voice. Trust the same government that let this happen in the first place? You don't have much choice. If you refuse my offer, I can't guarantee your safety. The men you've implicated will come for you, and next time they won't stop with burning a ranch. The governor's expression hardened. I'm offering you a way out, a way to survive this. I suggest you take it. Cutler started to speak. Rhett cut him off. No. Excuse me? I said no. We're not taking your deal. We're not hiding the evidence. We're going to trial. Public trial. Where everyone can see exactly what these men did. Rhett stepped forward. And if you try to stop us, I'll make sure every newspaper from here to Washington knows the governor of this territory tried to cover up murder and corruption. The governor's face went red. You're threatening me? I'm telling you what will happen. You can work with us or against us, but either way, the truth is coming out. You're a fool. You'll get yourself killed. Probably, but at least I'll die honest. Rhett looked at Cutler. We leaving or staying? Cutler hesitated, then nodded. We're leaving. They walked out. Nobody tried to stop them. But Vivian felt eyes on them the whole way, felt the danger building like storm clouds. That was stupid, Coleman said once they were back on the street. We just made an enemy of the governor. We already had enemies, Rhett said. What's one more? One more might be the one that kills us. Then we die. But we die doing the right thing. They found rooms at a boarding house far from the governor's mansion, set up watch rotations. Nobody slept well. In the morning, Cutler came to their room looking worried. The governor's office issued a statement, says you're dangerous criminals, says you killed innocent men in Black Hollow, says anyone who helps you is guilty of conspiracy. He's trying to discredit us, Vivian said. Make sure nobody believes our testimony. It's working. Half the city thinks you're outlaws now. The other half doesn't know what to think. Cutler ran a hand through his hair. We need to get ahead of this. Need to tell our side. How? Newspapers. Get the story out before he can bury it. Show people the evidence. Make it impossible to ignore. They spent that day meeting with newspaper editors. Most refused to even listen. Too afraid of the governor. Too worried about losing business. But one editor, a woman named Sarah Chen, who ran a small independent paper, agreed to hear them out. She read through the documents in silence, looked at the evidence, asked hard questions. Finally, she set the papers down. This is explosive. If I print this, it'll cause chaos. If you don't print it, men like Tully keep winning, Vivian said. Keep killing, keep stealing, keep getting away with it because everyone's too afraid to stop them. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her pen. I'll print it, front page, tomorrow's edition. She looked at them. But you need to understand, once this is public, there's no going back. Every powerful man in the territory will want you dead. You'll never be safe again. We're not safe now, Rhett said. At least this way our deaths will mean something. The paper came out the next morning. Vivian bought a copy from a street vendor and stared at the headline. Territorial corruption exposed. Widow uncovers murder conspiracy. The article was detailed, thorough. It named names, showed evidence, made it impossible to ignore or dismiss. By noon, the city was in an uproar. People arguing in the streets, government officials issuing denials, more newspapers picking up the story because they couldn't afford not to, and the governor issued arrest warrants. For Vivian, for Rhett, for everyone who'd helped expose the corruption. We're wanted criminals now, Coleman said, reading the warrant. For insurrection and murder. Insurrection, Rhett laughed.
That's a new one. This isn't funny. They're going to hunt us down. Let them try. But they did more than try. By evening, soldiers were searching the city, going door to door, looking for the people who'd embarrassed the territorial government. We need to leave, Cutler said, now, before they find us. They snuck out through the back of the boarding house, made it to the stables, were mounting up when soldiers appeared at both ends of the alley. Nowhere to run, the lieutenant said. He looked young, scared, like he didn't want to be doing this. Surrender and you'll get a fair trial. Fair trial from the man we just exposed as corrupt? Rhett's hand was on his gun. I'll pass. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. It's already hard. Rhett looked at Vivian. When I move, you ride. Don't stop, don't look back. Understand? Rhett, understand? She understood. He was going to fight. Give her time to escape. Sacrifice himself so she could survive. I'm not leaving you, she said. Yes, you are. Because someone needs to survive this. Someone needs to tell the story. He smiled. And it sure as hell isn't going to be me. Then he drew. The soldiers fired. Rhett fired back. The alley turned into chaos. But Vivian didn't ride away. Couldn't. Instead, she drew her own gun and started shooting. Martha did the same. Coleman. Everyone choosing to stand instead of run. The fight was brief, brutal. When it ended, 3 soldiers were down. The rest were retreating, calling for backup. That was stupid, Rhett said. He was bleeding again. New wound in his leg. I told you to run. And I told you I'm not leaving you. She helped him back into the saddle. We survived this together or not at all. They rode hard, out of the city, into the wilderness beyond. Soldiers followed but fell back when Rhett turned and fired, showing them what it would cost to catch up. Night found them in a canyon miles from anywhere. They made cold camp. No fire, no light, just darkness and the sound of breathing. We can't keep running forever, Martha said. We don't have to. Vivian pulled out the documents they'd shown the newspaper. The story's out there now. People know. Even if they catch us, even if they kill us, the truth is public. That's what matters. Is it? Coleman sounded bitter. Because it feels like we sacrificed everything and got nothing. We got justice for Caleb, got justice for everyone Tully hurt. She looked at the papers. That's not nothing. It's not enough. Maybe not, but it's what we have. They stayed hidden in the canyon for 3 days while the territory tore itself apart. News filtered in through travelers and merchants who passed through. The story had spread faster than wildfire. Other papers had picked it up. People in towns across the territory were demanding answers, demanding accountability. And the governor's office was scrambling, issuing denials, making arrests, trying to contain something that couldn't be contained anymore. They're eating their own, Cutler said on the 3rd evening. He'd ridden out to gather supplies and information. Half the territorial officials are blaming the other half. Tully's lawyer is trying to cut a deal. The land commissioner was found dead in his hotel room. Suicide, they're calling it. Murder, Rhett said flatly. They're cleaning house, getting rid of anyone who might talk. Probably, but it means the conspiracy's falling apart. They're losing control. Cutler looked at Vivian. The question is what happens to you now? The arrest warrants are still active, but there's pressure building. People want to hear your testimony, want to see a real trial. Will we get one? Maybe. If we can survive long enough. He pulled out a telegram. Got word from Washington. Federal prosecutor is coming. Wants to take over the case. Make it a federal matter instead of territorial. That's good news, Martha said. Maybe. Or maybe it's just another politician who wants to bury this quietly. Cutler folded the telegram. Either way, we need to get you somewhere safe until he arrives. Somewhere the territorial government can't reach. There's nowhere like that, Coleman said. They've got jurisdiction everywhere in the territory. Not everywhere. Rhett stood up, wincing at the pain in his leg. The reservation, 30 miles west. It's sovereign land. Territorial government has no authority there. You think they'll take us in? I think they've got no love for territorial officials, and I think they understand what it's like to have corrupt men stealing your land. He looked at Vivian. It's a risk, but everything's a risk now. They rode west at dawn. The landscape changed as they traveled, became more rugged, less settled.
By the second day, they were in territory Vivian had never seen. Red rock and sparse vegetation and sky that went on forever. The reservation appeared like something from a dream. Not what she'd expected. Not teepees and temporary camps, but permanent buildings, houses, a school, fields of corn and wheat. A community that existed in spite of everything the territory had done to destroy it. They were met at the boundary by 3 men on horseback. One of them was old. Gray-braided hair, face carved from weather and time. He looked at Rhett for a long moment.
"I know you," the old man said. "You were here 5 years ago, hunting the men who killed those ranchers." "I was," Rhett confirmed. "And you told me where to find them." "We did, because they'd murdered our people too, stolen our horses, thought we wouldn't fight back." The old man's smile was thin. "You made them regret that thinking." "We need help again, not hunting this time, hiding." "From who?" "The territorial government. We exposed corruption. Now they want us dead." The old man looked at the others in their group, tired, wounded, desperate. Then he nodded. "Come, we'll hear your story, then decide." They were brought to a central building where a council gathered. Vivian told them everything, showed them the documents, explained what had happened in Black Hollow and why they were running. When she finished, the council spoke among themselves in a language she didn't understand. Finally, the old man turned back to them. "We'll give you sanctuary. Not because we trust the territorial government, we don't, but because we understand what you're fighting. The men who stole your land are the same men who've been stealing ours for decades. The corruption you expose touches us too." He paused. "But we have conditions." "Name them," Vivian said. "You stay until the federal prosecutor arrives. You don't bring trouble here. And when this is over, when you've testified and the guilty are punished, you remember who helped you. You remember that we exist, that we're people too. Not obstacles to progress, not problems to be solved. People." The words hit harder than any bullet. Vivian had lived in the territory for years and never once thought about the reservation, never considered the people there. They'd been invisible to her, convenient to ignore. "I'll remember," she said. "I promise." Promises are easy. Keeping them is hard. But the old man's expression softened. "We'll see which kind of person you are." They were given a house on the edge of the settlement, small but solid, with a view of the mountains that made Vivian's chest ache because it was beautiful and because she'd stopped noticing beauty somewhere along the way. That night, she sat on the porch with Rhett. He was cleaning his gun, always cleaning his gun. She'd stopped asking why. "Think we'll actually make it?" she asked. "To the trial?" "Maybe. Through the trial? Less certain." He set the gun aside. "But we've made it this far. That's something." "Is it enough?" "Enough for what?" "Enough to matter. Enough to make up for everything we lost." She gestured at the empty horizon. "We don't have the ranch, don't have our people. Half of them are dead because they followed us. They followed an idea, that standing up to bullies was worth the cost." Rhett was quiet for a moment. "You can't control what other people choose. You can only control what you choose. They chose to fight. Some of them died. That's not on you." "Feels like it is." "It's not." He looked at her. "You want to carry guilt? There's plenty to go around. I've killed people, made choices that got others hurt. But carrying it doesn't change anything, doesn't bring anyone back. It just makes you slower when the next fight comes." "Is there always a next fight?" "Always. Until you stop fighting." He picked up the gun again. "Question is whether you fight for something that matters or just fight to fight." She thought about Caleb, about the ranch, about everything that had brought her to this porch in the middle of nowhere with a man she'd barely known 4 months ago. "What do you fight for?" she asked. "Used to fight for money, then for survival, then for nothing at all." He looked at her. "Now I fight for you, for the chance to build something that isn't built on blood." The words should have scared her, should have felt like too much. Instead, they felt exactly right. "We should sleep," she said. "Long day tomorrow." "Every day's a long day." But he stood up, followed her inside. And for the first time in weeks, Vivian felt something close to safe. The federal prosecutor arrived 10 days later. His name was Henderson. Older man, career prosecutor. The kind who'd seen everything and believed nothing.
He read through their evidence in silence, asked questions, challenged details, poked holes in their story until Vivian wanted to scream. Finally, he set the documents down. This is good. Very good. Enough to convict everyone involved. He looked at them over his spectacles. But you need to understand what you're walking into. These men have money, power, the best lawyers in the territory. They'll destroy you on the stand if you let them. Let them try, Rhett said. It's not about trying. It's about preparation. We need to go through everything, every detail, every moment. I need to know your story better than you do. Henderson pulled out a notebook. We start now, and we don't stop until you're ready. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Henderson drilled them constantly, made them repeat their story until they were sick of it, challenged every inconsistency, every assumption, every piece of evidence. The defense will say you're lying, he said during one session, that you manufactured evidence to cover up crimes you committed. How do you respond? With the truth, Vivian said, with documents that can be verified, with witnesses who aren't us. What witnesses? Most of them are dead. Martha's alive. Coleman, the people in Black Hollow who finally spoke up, Doc Pritchard who examined Caleb's body. She met his eyes. We're not the only ones who know what happened. Good. That's good. Henderson made notes. But you need to be careful. Don't get angry on the stand. Don't let them provoke you. Juries don't like angry women. The casual sexism of it made her teeth grind. But she nodded, because he was right. The system was built to favor men like Tully. She had to work twice as hard to be believed half as much. They practiced every day. Henderson playing the aggressive defense attorney, attacking their credibility, their motives, their relationship. You married this man days after your husband died, he said, playing the role. Isn't it true you were having an affair? That you killed Sheriff Mercer yourself so you could be with Calloway? No, that's a lie. Is it? Or is that what you want the jury to believe? Henderson leaned forward. Tell me, Mrs. Calloway, how much life insurance did your husband have? None. There was no insurance. Then what did you get out of his death? Nothing. I lost everything. Except a new husband, a man with a reputation, a man who could protect you in ways your late husband couldn't. Henderson's voice was sharp. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? She wanted to throw something at him, wanted to scream that Caleb had been murdered and she'd been forced into a marriage she didn't want, but she kept her voice steady. It wasn't convenient. It was survival. The law said I couldn't keep my property without a husband, so I married one. That doesn't make me a killer. Henderson broke character, smiled. Better, much better. Remember that tone, calm but firm. You're a victim here, but not a passive one. You fought back, that's your strength. The preparation continued, day after day, until Vivian could recite her testimony in her sleep, until she could face any question without flinching. Finally, Henderson declared them ready. The trial starts in a week. We'll be moving you to a secure location in the capital. Federal marshals will provide protection. He looked at both of them. This is going to be ugly, public. Everything about your lives will be scrutinized. You sure you want to go through with it? We don't have a choice, Vivian said. Everyone has choices. You could take immunity, disappear, let someone else fight this battle, and let Caleb's death mean nothing? Let Tully and his people get away with it? She shook her head. No, we see this through, whatever it costs. It'll cost everything. Henderson packed up his notes, but I'll do everything I can to make sure you survive it. They returned to the capital under heavy guard, 8 federal marshals, armed, alert, taking no chances. The city had changed in their absence, more tense, more divided. Half the population wanted justice, the other half wanted stability. Both sides were angry. They were taken to a building near the courthouse, windows barred, guards at every door, a prison disguised as protection. The night before the trial, Vivian couldn't sleep. She stood at the window looking out at the city, thinking about everything that had brought her here. Rhett came to stand beside her. He'd been quiet lately, more withdrawn, like he was preparing himself for something. You okay? She asked, thinking about tomorrow, about what comes after. After? After the trial. After we testify. After this is over. He was quiet for a moment. We can't go back to Black Hollow. Too many memories, too much blood.
Then where do we go? Somewhere new, somewhere we can build something that's ours, not inherited, not forced on us, just ours. He looked at her. If you want to. What about our marriage? The one that was supposed to be on paper only. What about it? Are we still pretending? She asked the question that had been building for weeks. Or is this real now? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, it's been real for a while. At least for me. For me too. Good. He took her hand. First time he'd done that without bullets flying or danger imminent. Then we build something real. After this is done. After we survive. Big if. Yeah, but I'm good at long odds. The trial began the next morning. The courthouse was packed. Every seat filled. People standing in the aisles. Everyone wanted to see the widow and the gunfighter take on the territorial elite.
Tully sat at the defense table looking smug, confident, like he'd already won. His lawyers were expensive suits and practiced smiles, the kind of men who could make lies sound like truth. Henderson presented the evidence methodically. Documents, land deeds, testimony from survivors. He built the case piece by piece until even the skeptics had to acknowledge something was wrong. Then it was Vivian's turn. She walked to the stand, swore to tell the truth, sat down facing a courtroom full of strangers who would decide whether she was victim or villain. Henderson questioned her gently, leading her through the story, letting her tell it in her own words. But then the cross-examination began. Tully's lead attorney was a man named Blackwood, silver-haired, smooth-voiced. He smiled at her like they were old friends. Mrs. Calloway, or should I call you Mrs. Mercer? It's hard to keep track of your names. Calloway is fine. Of course, though you do seem to go through husbands quickly. Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. How long were you married to Sheriff Mercer before he died? 3 years? And how long after his death did you remarry? 30 days, as the law required. The law required you to marry. It didn't require you to marry a known killer, a man with a reputation for violence. Blackwood gestured to Rhett. Tell me, did you know about Mr. Calloway's past when you married him? I knew some of it. Some of it? Which parts? The part where he killed 19 people in Texas? Or the part where he was wanted for murder in 3 territories? Objection, Henderson said. Mr. Calloway has never been convicted of any crime. Sustained, the judge said. Watch yourself, Mr. Blackwood. But the damage was done. The jury was looking at Rhett differently, seeing him as the dangerous criminal instead of the protector. Blackwood continued, picking apart her story, suggesting she'd manipulated evidence, suggesting Rhett had killed Caleb so they could be together, suggesting everything was a conspiracy to steal land and frame innocent men. It went on for hours. Vivian held her ground, answered every question, refused to break. But she could see the jury wavering, see doubt creeping in. Then Rhett took the stand. He walked up calm, sat down, looked at the courtroom like he was daring someone to challenge him. Henderson questioned him first, asked about his past, his relationship with Caleb, why he'd agreed to marry Vivian. I owed Caleb Mercer my life, Rhett said. He pulled me out of a burning building 5 years ago, saved me when he had no reason to. When I heard he'd been murdered and his widow was being forced into marriage, I paid the debt. That's all. That's all? Blackwood said during cross-examination. You married a woman you barely knew out of debt? Nothing to do with the ranch, the property, the money? There was no money. The ranch was failing. If I'd wanted property, I would have found an easier way to get it. Like killing the previous owner? I didn't kill Caleb Mercer. But you've killed before, 19 men according to legend. Is that number accurate? Close enough. The courtroom gasped. Rhett didn't flinch. So you admit you're a murderer? I admit I've killed people. Murder's a different thing. Murder's what happened to Caleb Mercer. What I did was survive bad situations in a hard territory. Rhett leaned forward. But if you want to talk about murder, let's talk about your client. Let's talk about how Marcus Tully hired men to kill a sheriff because that sheriff found evidence of corruption. Let's talk about how he tried to burn me and my wife alive because we wouldn't stay quiet. You want to call someone a murderer? Start with him. Blackwood tried to regain control, tried to make Rhett look like a monster. But Rhett wouldn't break. He answered every question with brutal honesty, admitted his past, acknowledged his violence, but never apologized for surviving. The trial lasted 2 weeks, witness after witness, document after document. The evidence piled higher than any defense could climb, and slowly the jury's faces changed. The doubt turned to certainty, the skepticism to anger. On the final day, Henderson gave his closing argument. He spoke about corruption, about justice, about ordinary people standing up against extraordinary evil. Then it was Blackwood's turn. He talked about reasonable doubt, about unreliable witnesses, about the tragedy of seeing innocent men destroyed by false accusations. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Vivian spent every minute pacing, unable to sit, unable to think about anything but what happened if they lost. Finally, the jury returned. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find the defendant Marcus Tully? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Tully's face went white. His lawyers immediately started shouting about appeals. But the jury wasn't done. Guilty on corruption charges, guilty on fraud, guilty on everything Henderson had charged. The other defendants got similar verdicts. The mayor, the council members, the land commissioner's associates, all guilty. The judge sentenced them on the spot. 20 years for Tully, 15 for the others. No possibility of parole. This court finds that corruption at any level of government is a cancer that must be cut out, the judge said. These men abused their positions, murdered innocent people, stole from the territory they were supposed to serve. They deserve no mercy and will receive none. It was over. Actually, over. Vivian felt something break inside her. Not bad. Just the tension she'd been holding for months finally releasing. Rhett found her outside the courthouse. The crowd was still celebrating. People she didn't know were thanking her, shaking her hand, calling her a hero. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a survivor. There was a difference. "We did it," she said. "We survived," Rhett corrected. "That's all we ever do." "Is it enough?" "Has to be." He took her hand. "Come on, let's go home." "We don't have a home." "Then let's go build one." They left the Capitol that afternoon. Coleman and Martha came with them. So did a few others who'd testified. People who had nowhere else to go. People who'd been changed by everything that happened. They rode back toward Black Hollow, but stopped before reaching it. Found land 20 miles south. Empty prairie with a creek running through it. Nothing special. But it was theirs. "We could build here," Vivian said. "Yeah." Rhett looked around. "We could. Start over. Build a ranch that's actually ours. Not inherited, not stolen, just ours. It'll take years. We've got years." She looked at him. "Don't we?" "Far as I know." He smiled. "Unless someone else tries to kill us." "They probably will. This is the frontier. Then we deal with it, together." They started building the next day. Nothing fancy, just a cabin to start. Then a barn, then fences and pasture and all the things a working ranch needed. Other people came, drawn by the story, by the idea that regular people had stood up to corruption and won. Some stayed, some moved on, but slowly a community formed. One afternoon, 3 months after the trial, a boy appeared. Couldn't have been more than 9, dirty, skinny, carrying a bundle that held everything he owned. "You Vivian Calloway?" he asked. "I am. Who are you?" "Noah Briggs. Sheriff Mercer told me to come here if anything happened to him. Said you'd help." The boy's voice wavered. "Said you were good people." Vivian looked at Rhett. He looked back. Some silent conversation happening between them. "Caleb sent you?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Before he died. Said if I was ever in trouble I should find his wife. Said she'd take care of me." "Your parents?" "Dead, both of them. Got nobody else." Vivian should have said no, should have explained they were barely getting by themselves, that they didn't know how to raise a child, that this was too much. Instead, she said, "You hungry?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then come inside, we'll get you fed, figure out the rest after." Noah stayed, not because they forced him, but because he had nowhere else to go. And because somehow this broken collection of people who'd survived the worst became something like family. Rhett taught him to ride, to fix fences, to shoot when necessary and walk away when possible. Vivian taught him to read, to think, to question authority but respect truth. And slowly, the ranch became something real, not just a place, a home. One evening, almost a year after the trial, Vivian stood on the porch watching the sunset. Noah was in the barn practicing his roping. Martha was teaching him. Coleman was fixing the north fence, life happening in all directions. Rhett came to stand beside her. He'd gotten quieter over the year, more settled, like he'd finally stopped running from his past and started building a future. Thinking about Caleb? He asked. Yeah, wondering if he'd be proud of what we built, or disappointed we didn't keep the original ranch. He'd be proud. This is better than what we had. This is honest. Rhett looked at the ranch spreading out before them. Everything here was built by choice, not obligation, not law, choice. You chose to stay. I did. Even though the marriage contract expired, you could have left months ago. Could have, didn't want to. He looked at her. You want me to leave? No. She took his hand, natural now, easy. I want you to stay, for real this time. Not because you owe a debt, not because the law says so, because you want to. I want to. He squeezed her hand. I'm done running, done fighting unless I have to, done being the ghost. I'm just Rhett now, your husband. That enough? More than enough. They stood there as the sun set, turning the prairie into shades of orange and red and purple. Noah came out of the barn with Martha, both laughing about something. Coleman rode up from the fence line, waving to show the work was done. This was what they'd fought for. Not revenge, not justice, though they'd gotten that too. This, the chance to build something that mattered, the chance to choose their own family instead of accepting the one circumstances forced on them. The territory changed after the trial. New officials came in, honest ones, mostly. The corruption got rooted out slowly. Never completely, corruption never died completely, but enough that people could breathe. Black Hollow rebuilt. Got a new sheriff, new council, people who actually cared about the town instead of just what they could steal from it. And sometimes, on quiet nights, Vivian thought about how it had all started. A murder, a forced marriage, a widow who'd lost everything, and a gunfighter who'd thought he had nothing to lose. They'd both been wrong about what they had to lose, and right about what they could build if they survived long enough. Noah grew up on the ranch, became a good man, eventually left to find his own path, but always came back, always knew where home was. Martha stayed too, found peace in the open spaces, found purpose in helping build something good. Coleman married a woman from the nearest town, built his own place 5 miles north, close enough to help when needed, but far enough for privacy. The ranch prospered, not quickly, not easily, but steadily. They raised cattle, horses, built a reputation for honest dealing in a territory that had been starved for honesty, and Vivian and Rhett built a life that neither of them had expected. Not perfect. They fought sometimes, disagreed, had scars that never fully healed, but they'd survived, together. That counted for something. Years later, when they were old and the ranch was established and Noah had kids of his own, someone asked Vivian what she'd learned from everything that happened. She thought about it, really thought about it. I learned that justice isn't clean, she said finally. It's messy and expensive, and sometimes the good guys die before they see it happen. I learned that standing up to power costs everything you have and maybe everything you are. I learned that survival isn't the same as winning, but it's worth fighting for anyway. And, the person pressed, was it worth it? Vivian looked around, at the ranch, at Rhett teaching Noah's kids to rope, at the life they'd built from ashes and blood and stubborn refusal to quit. Ask me when I'm dead, she said. Right now, I'm too busy living to know if it was worth dying for. But privately, she knew the answer. It had been worth it. Not because they'd gotten justice, not because they'd won, because they'd chosen each other. In a world that tried to take away their choices, they'd fought to keep choosing, to keep building, to keep living in spite of everything. That was the real victory, not the trial, not the arrests, just the simple act of surviving together and deciding that was enough. The sun set on the ranch, another day done, another day survived, and tomorrow they'd wake up and do it again.
Because that's what you did on the frontier. You survived. You built. You chose your family and fought for them. And if you were lucky, really lucky, you lived long enough to see what you'd built matter. Vivian had gotten lucky. Against all odds, against every expectation, she'd found something worth fighting for, someone worth surviving with. And in the end, that was all anyone could hope for, to find their people, to build their home, to survive long enough to see it matter. The rest was just details.